I woke up inside the body of a boy who had just swallowed poison over a girl. His name was Joe Jin, a broke baron in the Starlight Empire whose fiancée had traded him for a viscount's son. Then the Super Starfleet system bound to me with one rule, that my fleet could only recruit female soldiers. So I bought a cage of slaves, found a lost war general named Charlotte inside it, and built a warship nobody could kill. She threw away a nobody, and I got a fleet. Slap a like on this and subscribe before we dive deeper. The channel grows only when you do. But every fortune begins in a small room. Let me show you mine. I opened my eyes in the middle of a lecture on Stargate technology, and for a second the only thing I know for certain is that my head is spinning. If I remember right, I stayed up late gaming and went under the moment class started this morning. What surprises me is that the Extinction Master, who never lets a sleeping student survive his hour, has not come down on me yet. Then my face freezes, because the classroom around me is wrong in every direction I look. The desks are not wooden anymore. They are cut from some pure white material I have never seen. Every student has a holographic light screen floating in front of them, and the uniforms are the kind you only get in interstellar war movies. I reach out to touch the display hanging in front of my seat. At first there is the feeling of pressing on something solid, but when I put weight behind it, my whole hand passes straight through. Where the classroom wall used to be, there is now a floor-to-ceiling window. Outside it, a galaxy burns in full color, the kind of thing I have only ever seen in science programs. Electronic scrolls hang along the other walls, some showing fighters, some showing warships. And those are not Navy warships. Those are interstellar warships, straight out of a game. Then I look at the teacher on the podium and nearly go over backward in my chair. It is a humanoid creature wearing clothes, but there is no hair on its head, only a vine-like texture, and on both sides of its skull sit ears shaped like butterfly wings. Whatever is lecturing us on Stargates, it is not a human being. I am still deciding whether I am dreaming when the memories arrive. Interstellar Era, Starlight Empire, Galactic Calendar Year 3030, North Star Starship Military Academy, Captain Department, 3rd year, and the student sitting in this seat is named Joe Jin. The whole file dumps itself into my skull at once, and I clutch my head hard enough to hurt, which is when the boy beside me leans over and asks whether I am feeling sick. His name surfaces before I even look at him properly, Lee Y, my good friend and classmate, and I wave him off and tell him I only stayed up too late. Then I sit through the rest of the lecture with a calm face while I quietly take inventory of everything I have just become. I have transmigrated, not into a game and not into a dream, but into the interstellar era. I am a Captain Department cadet in a military academy inside the Starlight Empire, and this body was supposed to grow up commanding an interstellar warship. I touch my pocket and find a small medicine bottle sitting there, and the memory attached to it explains the rest of it. The boy who owned this body swallowed poison over a broken heart, and his death is the reason I am sitting in his seat, with his name. Then a mechanical woman's voice speaks up inside my head and tells me the Super Starfleet system is binding, and a moment later that the binding is complete, and the host is Joe Jin. It opens a newbie gift pack while I sit there with my jaw locked. Out of it come 100 system points, the top starship engineer profession, 1 technical blueprint for a Tier 3 Blizzard-class light interstellar battlecruiser, and 1 draw at a random special attribute. So this is my golden finger. About time somebody dealt me one. A virtual page opens the instant I think about it, and it lays out everything I own in one line. Host Joe Jin, profession top starship engineer, special attribute none, points 100, number of starships 0, quarterly task unclaimed, and 1 Tier 3 Blizzard-class light interstellar battlecruiser blueprint sitting in the warehouse. I raise my hand, pull up the holographic computer built into the desk, and query some ordinary material on starship manufacturing to test the profession. The knowledge does not just make sense to me, it unfolds, one principal handing me the next 3, and I catch myself wondering whether that means I can build a starship with my own hands. The system explains the points before I have to ask. They come in daily based on how many starships I own, and only starships built from system blueprints count. I can also earn them by finishing system tasks, and I can spend them on goods in the system mall. The mall itself is a disappointment when I open it, because the blueprints and the odds and ends inside are all Tier 1 technology and nothing better. In this world, every piece of technology is graded, Tier 1 and Tier 2 and Tier 3 and upward, and starships follow the same ladder, with combat power and sophistication climbing at every step, which is exactly why the blueprint sitting in my warehouse is worth what it is worth. A Tier 3 starship blueprint trades for billions of star coins inside the Starlight Empire, sometimes tens of billions. As far as the public knows, the Empire has fewer than 10 Tier 3 starships in active service anywhere. If word got out that a 3rd-year cadet was carrying one in his pocket, the entire Empire would come apart at the seams. An innocent man stays innocent, right up until somebody learns he is holding a treasure. So this thing stays buried until I am strong enough to hold it. The pity is that holding it and building it are different problems. By my own memory and my new knowledge, a Tier 3 hull needs at least 10 million star coins of raw material and construction cost before it is anything but a drawing. I am a long way from that number. The quarterly task is the other thing on the panel, a task the system generates every 3 months with a reward attached at the end. I claim the first one before I can talk myself out of it. It wants me to possess one starship produced by the system. That is not a small ask for a man whose account would embarrass a scholarship student. That leaves the special attribute. I select the option, and a box unfolds with 3 lines in it, and the system informs me that one attribute and its execution condition will be chosen at random. Option 1, my Starfleet may only recruit male soldiers, and I gain a fleet combat power bonus and an inspiring voice. Option 2, my Starfleet may only recruit female soldiers, and I gain a fleet luck bonus and a universal language. My face goes dark. This system is messing with me. The cursor starts moving before I can object, sweeping across the 3 options like a roulette wheel, and it slows and settles on the second one. The system congratulates me on obtaining the fleet luck bonus and the Eye of Insight. Then it instructs me to unconditionally execute the regulation that my fleet may only recruit female soldiers, and it warns that a violation revokes both rewards and earns an unknown punishment on top. I cover my face with one hand. Only female soldiers, which is a little bit, you know. And yet somewhere under the embarrassment I notice a small traitorous flicker of anticipation. Fine. It cannot be changed, so I let nature take its course and go read what I actually won. The fleet luck bonus does what the name says, granting a measure of luck to me and to anything flying under my name. The exact effect is unlisted, because luck is not a thing anybody has ever managed to put a number on. The Eye of Insight is sharper, used on any species while I am standing aboard my own starship. It tells me whether that creature is carrying hostility or killing intent toward me. As long as my feet are on my own deck, nothing gets to surprise me. On paper, I am safe on my own ship for the rest of my life. On paper, I also do not have a ship. The teacher wraps up the lecture and tells us the semester is ending, and the next semester begins practical training. Since every one of us belongs to the captain department, he says, every one of us will need a starship of his own by then, purchased personally or redeemed against academy credits. He adds that the crew may be students from other departments, or people we hire ourselves, as long as everything complies with regulations. Then he walks out and leaves the room to detonate behind him. Every student in the row starts talking about the ship he is preparing. One boy announces that his father has already ordered him this year's improved Tier 2 interstellar destroyer, the best-selling model of the last decade. Another one insists that a man's romance is massive ships and massive cannons, and that anyone with taste flies an interstellar battleship. A third admits he does not have the family behind him and will finish his studies in an interstellar frigate, and the whole room agrees that this is sad, but reasonable. Listening to them, I catch myself building my own ship in my head, because every boy who ever looked up at night wanted to gallop across the universe eventually. Lee Y leans in and asks whether I have decided what to redeem. He warns me that the academy list is long, but the good holes go early, and reminds me that I still have to assemble a crew. I ask him casually how his own preparation is going, and he grins and lifts his wrist. The handheld terminal there looks like a watch and weighs about as much as a feather. It throws a 3-dimensional model into the air between us, a hull shaped along traditional lines, closer to an old surface warship than anything else. Main cannons and missile launchers sit along its spine. He tells me it is a Tier 2 Hyena-class medium interstellar destroyer retailing at 4,300,000 star coins. His father ordered it for him, and even arranged the crew, all retired veterans with more than 10 years of service each. Then something occurs to him and his face changes, and he says carefully that if I really cannot find anything suitable in the academy warehouse, he could ask his father to help. I tell him not to bother, that I already have an idea about the starship, and that we will go and collect mine after we eat. Lee Y's family runs interstellar trade and ranks somewhere in the top 10 of the Empire's northern star system, so a 4 million star coin destroyer is not a strain on them. What he does not know is that on paper my own position is no worse than his. My father died early, which means I have already inherited the title of Baron, and I hold a star system territory in my own name. The pity is what the territory actually is. My star system is stripped almost bare of resources, and worse than that, it is a single star system, which makes a Stargate physically impossible to build there. A star system with no Stargate and no special resources is not poor. It is worthless. The barony came down from my great-grandfather, an Imperial Army fleet commander who earned enough military merit to be made a count and granted a fief. My grandfather never added to it, and neither did my father, so the title slipped a rung at a time until it reached me as a barony. If I earn nothing in my own hands, my descendants inherit nothing at all, and the Empire takes the territory back. Given where I am sitting, the Empire may as well start the paperwork. There is not a single Tier 2 hull in my star system right now, and the ships responsible for its security are a handful of Tier 1 antiques. The only mercy in any of it is that we are too poor for interstellar pirates to bother with. Lee Y has tried to help me before, more than once, and this body's owner always refused, because whatever else he was proud. We walk toward the academy cafeteria together, and halfway across the floor, Lee Y puts an arm around my shoulder and tries to steer me down the side path like a man hiding a corpse. The thing he does not want me to see, I have already seen. Gang Sara, my fiancé, at least on paper. She is sitting with a boy, and anybody who knows her knows he is pursuing her, and Lee Y covers his face and swears quietly at how small the world is. He knows the two of us grew up together, and that she comes from the same star system. Her family is a noble house inside my own territory, and the engagement was set when we were children. He also knows that everything changed the year we were both admitted here. Inside this academy there are boys with better names than mine, and boys with deeper pockets than mine, and next to them I am a down-and-out noble from the countryside. The boy who owned this body loved her at the start. She heard him for it again and again. He kept trying to salvage it, and she answered with a cold that had cruelty underneath. Lee watched him lose his appetite over it for months. What Lee Y does not know is that this morning the boy stopped trying and swallowed the bottle, and that the man walking beside him now is somebody else entirely. I tell him the seat by the window is better and walk straight ahead. To everyone watching, that means I am walking straight at Gang Sara. Gang Sara sees him coming and feels her stomach turn over with disgust. She told him last night, in plain words, that they are people from two different worlds, and he still stood there talking about childhood and asking her to reconsider, as if that were an argument. Only after she left that impoverished star system did she understand what a brilliant life even looks like. She is not going back to be a baroness worth nothing at all, in a house whose children cannot inherit a title. She will not live that life and nobody can make her. The boy sitting beside her is an investment she picked out carefully. His family is solid. His father is a viscount already and may be raised to count within a few years, and that makes his son a title in waiting. She decides she will find an excuse and reject Jo Jin quietly, because she has already given him more face than he has earned. If he insists on not knowing what is good for him, then the public humiliation is his own doing. Her expression cools into the one she has prepared. The boy beside her is enjoying himself too. He has looked into her background, so he knows exactly who this down-and-out baron is. There's nothing he likes better than the ashamed, furious face a man makes when you take something he loves. Both of them are waiting for the scene to start. Jo Jin walks past without so much as turning his head. Gang Sara sits there dumbfounded, the boy beside her sits there dumbfounded, and Lee Y looks like somebody has replaced his best friend with a stranger. I take the table against the huge transparent window and point out to Lee Y that from here you can watch the starships docked in the distance. He asks whether I am seriously sitting here for the scenery, and the answer is yes, I am. Something in a man's blood turns over when he looks at a hull, and mine has been turning over since the memories landed. I start matching the ships at that starport against the knowledge in my head, one by one. Most of them are Tier 2, with a scattering of Tier 1. Tier 1 is an outdated product in this era, kept around for civilian work or handed to star systems for patrol and guard duty. Anything that expects to see a battlefield needs to be Tier 2 at minimum. A Tier 2 hull runs several times larger than a Tier 1. The two most common shapes are the Interstellar Destroyer and the Interstellar Frigate, which together make up 2/3 of everything parked out there. The rest are interstellar cruisers and interstellar battlecruisers. I do spot one Tier 1 interstellar battleship, but it is an antique by any measure. What I do not see anywhere is an aircraft carrier starship, which figures. Interstellar battleships and aircraft carrier starships are the most expensive things anyone builds. One of them the hegemon of interstellar air combat, and the other the banner of giant ships and giant cannons. I find the exact model Lee Y bought, a Tier 2 Hyena-class medium interstellar destroyer, currently the best-selling Tier 2 destroyer in the Starlight Empire and beloved for it. The hull runs 230 meters, about the footprint of a large stadium. The one at the dock still wears its original steel-colored paint, and along the right side of the hull are 3 emblems that together work as its identity card. At the front is the Galactic Alliance emblem, which every starship inside the Alliance is required to carry, and the Starlight Empire is a member. Behind that sits the 7-star emblem of the Empire itself, 1 star for each of the 7 families that founded it. Last and largest is the emblem of the ship's owner, along with the ship number, and that one is painted big enough to read from a distance. Lee Y offers to treat me, and I take my time about it, tapping the ordering panel and swiping straight to the last page of the menu just to watch him sweat. He laughs bitterly and reminds me that his father may have bought him a starship, but the monthly allowance attached to it is not generous. I let him off and tell him that he may be a rich second generation and I may be a down-and-out baron, but I have not fallen far enough to sponge off a friend. He can treat me once he is genuinely successful. Then I order the cheapest set meal on the list, and he orders something almost identical. A robot waiter brings them out and announces our nutrition set A and nutrition set C with perfect courtesy. The food looks good. It tastes like chewing plastic. Lee Wei picks at his and complains that prices have climbed again. Eating artificial nutrition sets every single day is going to cost him his sense of taste, he says, and what he really wants is naturally grown food. I tell him without looking up to go beg his old man for a bigger allowance. He waves that away and explains that his father is a miser who spent big exactly once, on the ship. Naturally grown ingredients now cost so much that his father eats 3 plain meals and 1 soup a day and touches meat once a week. A life of luxury every day, he says, belongs to the upper nobility and nobody else. I look down at my tray and understand the whole economy in one glance. Everything in this era is advanced, and everything works, except the food. The population is enormous, and the land has been developed past its limit. Naturally grown crops cost so much that the overwhelming majority of ordinary people live on cheap artificial nutrition meals with no flavor in them at all. Officials, nobles, and wealthy merchants eat real food. Everyone else reads about it. Plain rice and steamed buns and vegetables, the most ordinary things on a table in my previous life, are luxury goods here, and even middle and lower nobles only see them on special occasions. Then an unfriendly voice asks from the next table why a dignified baron is eating that kind of food. Lee Wei frowns and looks over, and Gangsara and the boy I ignored are sitting right beside us. The boy is not nobody either. His name is Jang Horan, and his father is a viscount. I keep my head down and keep eating. Jang Horan informs me, at volume, that Gangsara has already agreed to be his girlfriend. If I have any sense, he says, I will annul the engagement myself, and I ought to weigh what I am actually worth before imagining I am worthy of her. He says it with the particular relish of a man who has found his favorite hobby, which is humiliating people in front of an audience. Ignoring him the first time has already spoiled his mood, so he simply picks the fight himself and drags his relationship with Gangsara into the middle of it. She frowns slightly at that. She agreed to spend some time with him, and hearing him call it dating in public annoys her more than she expects. Only then do I look up, give him one indifferent glance, and say a single syllable back at him. His mouth twitches. There is supposed to be a rumor that this cadet is desperately in love with Gangsara, and here he is, provoked to his face, answering like a man asked about the weather. Gangsara looks at me with the same confusion, because something about me is not matching her memory. Jang Horan tries again and calls me a useless baron and a piece of trash who will never accomplish anything. Lee Wei cannot take it and points a finger at him and tells him not to push his luck. I put down my utensils and tell Jang Horan, in the flattest tone I have, that if I am a useless baron, then he does not qualify as trash. If my memory serves, he has failed his final exams 3 years running, and he would have been expelled long ago if his father were not pulling strings. His face goes red with the specific shame of a man whose sore spot has been named in public. He fires back that connections are connections, that his father has already arranged a Tier 2 starship for him next semester, and that I will be lucky to drag out a Tier 1. There are live combat drills coming, he reminds me, laughing hard enough to hold his stomach, and a Tier 1 hull in a live drill is just a target with a paint job. Right then, the system speaks up and offers me a random task, which is to issue a starship duel challenge to Jang Horan and defeat him in that duel, and asks whether I accept. I do not let it show on my face, but this is not the timing I expected. Beating Jang Horan will be difficult, though compared to that quarterly task it is almost gentle, and the important part is not even the unlisted reward. Completing it grants 1 task point. My account has system points, but the system mall does not let me spend them freely. Every redemption requires task points alongside the points themselves, and a Tier 1 item costs 1 task point plus its price in points. Task points are exactly the thing I have none of and need most. Jang Horan reads my silence as damage. He tells me kindly that instead of wasting time here humiliating myself, I might as well roll back to my remote interstellar territory early, and he is very pleased with the line. Gangsara watches all of it without moving. If this is what finally makes Jojin understand the distance between them and retreat, she thinks, then that is not a bad outcome either. The corner of my mouth pulls up. I ask him aloud who exactly is humiliating himself. Then I lift my head and look him straight in the eyes for the first time since he sat down, with everything I think of him in my face. At the same time, I confirm the task in my head, and the system locks it in. D rank difficulty, reward 1 task point and 300 points. Failure penalty, a deduction of 300 points. I have 100 points to my name, so failing would leave the account somewhere below 0, which is a novel way to be poor. Jang Horan is still going, pointing at my nose now. A man who has not even sorted out a starship, he says, has no right to speak and is not qualified to stay at North Star. A fallen noble is supposed to accept his humiliation quietly, and he cannot understand why this one keeps playing out of turn. I reach into the collar of my uniform and take out my academy student card, the one that handles study and living and everything else here, including starship duels. Then I ask him why we do not settle it with one. He stops, stares, then bursts out laughing and walks right up to my table. He asks what exactly a man without a starship intends to fight him with, and whether I am even worthy of the attempt. I tell him the time is not now, that there is a month left in the semester, and that we will set it before the end of June with me naming the hour. If I lose, I withdraw from the academy next semester. Then I narrow my eyes and let the other half of the sentence hang. He walks straight into it and says that if he loses, he will drop out. By now this has gone somewhere neither Gang Sara nor Lee Y expected. Lee Y shoves his chair back, pushes Jang Horan away from the table, and plants himself in front of me, demanding that Jang Horan duel him instead if he has the nerve. Jang Horan spreads his hands and points out to the audience that everyone here saw who proposed it, because Lee Wee's father carries real weight and he has no interest in that kind of trouble. I put a hand on Lee Wee's shoulder and tell him to let me handle this one myself. When he starts to argue, I tell him that if he still considers me a friend, he will trust me. He grinds his teeth and settles for glaring. A holographic box opens in the air between Jang Horan and me. It states that third-year student Jo Jin has issued a Starship duel request to third-year student Jang Horan, timed tentatively within 1 month, and asks for confirmation. The commotion has pulled in a crowd by now. Starship duels are rare things, because they are live combat, and live combat means hull damage and sometimes casualties. The whole North Star Starship Military Academy only sees 4 or 5 of them in a month. Jang Horan takes out his own card with the sneer still on, says that he does not know where I get my confidence, but that he will make me regret today, and accepts. The duel goes into the Academy database with only the hour left to fix. I wipe my mouth and ask Lee whether he has finished eating, and he stares at me, says he supposes he is, and follows me out with no appetite left in him. Jang Horan watches us go and lets himself enjoy it, a man without a starship, challenging him. When the day comes, it will be that man losing face in front of the whole third year. He turns to Gang Sara and tells her not to worry, because once he beats Jo Jin and drives him out of the academy, the pestering stops for good. He says it standing in the posture of somebody who has already won. Gang Sara answers with a sound rather than a word, because she is still watching the doorway. Something about Jo Jin has changed, and more than that, she has only now noticed the part that bothers her most. From the first moment to the last, he never once looked at her directly. She cannot tell whether he has genuinely forgotten her or whether he is performing, and she cannot explain why either possibility sits so badly. Out in the corridor, Lee Y starts in on me. He says I was too impulsive, that he knows I hate Jang Horan for taking Gang Sara, and that hating him was no reason to stake my enrollment on a Starship duel. The application is already in the system, and it cannot be withdrawn, he says, and then he offers me his Tier 2 hyena if it comes to that. I tell him there is no need, because I have a Starship. Watching him worry himself sick on my behalf puts an unexpected warmth in my chest. Lee Y treats me like a brother for a simple reason. From the day we enrolled, the boy who owned this body tutored this trading family heir through every subject and walked him through every project. Without that help, he would not have passed a single exam in 3 years. That debt turned into something better a long time ago. He asks how I could possibly have a Starship without him knowing, since he spends 24 hours a day beside me except when one of us is asleep or in the bathroom. I tell him we are going to go redeem one right now. He grabs his own head, calls me his barren young master, and asks whether I seriously intend to fight Jang Horan with a hull out of the Academy warehouse. Half an hour later, we are standing in the Academy Starship warehouse. It is nothing like the starport. The starport holds ships ready to leave at any moment, and the warehouse holds ships nobody has thought about in years, some of them wearing enough dust to plant crops in. I walk up to the administrator's counter and tell him I am here to redeem a Starship. He glances at me without much interest, because it is the end of term and third-year students have been filing through here for weeks. He opens the viewing interface and tells me to look for myself, since the list carries the data, the specifications, and the credit price of every hull. There are nearly 300 of them, and the overwhelming majority are Tier 1 and second-hand, which stands to reason. Nobody parks a new ship in a warehouse. Lee Y starts working the problem for me immediately. My grades have always been good, he says, so after 3 semesters I should have 30,000 Academy credits. That is enough for the Tier 2 Hyena-class medium interstellar destroyer sitting near the top. It is 20 years old with minor hull damage, he admits, but the core technology is comprehensive, and the model is only a little dated. I shake my head and keep reading. He offers several more Tier 2 hulls, all of them sensible, all of them good value, and I shake my head at every one. Eventually he asks how much longer I intend to take. Since 300 ships or not, he has already found me the best of them. I tell him I have already chosen. He asks which one, so I turn to the administrator first and ask whether it is true that I can redeem as many starships as my credits cover. The administrator confirms there is no limit on the number. I tick 3 boxes in the interface and tell him I want these. 3. Lee Wei and the administrator look at each other and then at the list. The first is a Tier 2 Hyena-class medium interstellar destroyer, 59 years in service, hull severely damaged, 3 main cannons severely damaged, and since repaired priced at 9,000 credits. The second is a Tier 2 Grey Wolf class light interstellar cruiser, 65 years in service, 7,000 credits. The third is a Tier 2 Devil Crocodile class medium interstellar battleship, 80 years in service, 11,000 credits. They are, without argument, the three oldest pieces of scrap in the building. The administrator asks whether I am certain and suggests I reconsider. These were decent models in their day, he points out, but a great deal of time has passed and the modules are severely aged. Lee Y tells me to stop joking, because a starship duel is 1 against 1 and choosing 3 of anything does not help. I tell them both that I am sure that it is these 3 and that I would like them redeemed. The administrator confirms it with me repeatedly and then processes it. Lee Y covers his face beside me with the expression of a man in a dream he cannot wake up from. The 3 hulls are transferred to my name, and I am told I can collect them whenever I like, with warehouse storage free for 1 month and parking fees after that. Then I ask whether credits can also be spent on starship parts. I remind him that every student is entitled to free use of the starship modification and maintenance dock, and that having never touched mine in 3 semesters, I have 30 days of it banked. He confirms both. So I write out a parts list and ask him to arrange a dock and have the 3 hulls and everything on the list delivered there. He looks the list over and finds nothing on it worth a second thought. All of it thoroughly ordinary, and the credits I have left after the ships cover it almost exactly. He asks whether I want to hire engineers or mechanics to repair and modify the ships to my specification, and I tell him no. He decides not to meddle any further, says he will have it done within half an hour, and tells me he will send the dock number so I can go straight there. We leave. Behind us, the administrator mutters that I am a strange student, and he is not wrong. Outside the warehouse, Lee Y finally cracks and grabs my shoulder. He demands to know what exactly I am doing, and what possible use 3 pieces of junk could serve, and tells me I am playing games with my own future. I keep my voice level and ask him to trust me and tell him I will handle it well. He says he cannot be bothered to care anymore, waves his hand, and storms off in the manner of a man who is going to care about it all night. I do not blame him. If I explained the truth right now, he would not believe a word of it. And rather than waste the breath, I would rather let the facts do the talking when the day comes. The notice arrives a moment later. 3rd-year student Joe Jin has obtained the right to use Starship Dock number 17, and within the usage period, my student card will open the door. I say goodbye to Lee Y and go. The card opens the dock door onto a space the size of 3 or 5 football fields. The first thing that reaches me is the smell, rust, and Starship engine oil together, thick enough to taste. The 3 hulls sit inside like they have been waiting for me. Rust spots their plating and the marks of old battles are still readable on it, and whatever maintenance the Academy has done over the years cannot hide the decades they have been in service. I go to the workshop's master control console first, bring up the holographic screens one after another, and start feeding in data as fast as my hands can move. When it finishes, all 3 hulls are laid out in front of me in full detail, and I put together a 3-dimensional model of my own on top of them. Anyone looking closely would notice that each of the 3 models is divided into gray areas and red areas. I take the red areas and overlap them, and what forms in the air is the vague prototype of a starship that makes no sense at all to look at. Then I pull a top-secret file out of my handheld terminal and put its model up beside mine. It is the Tier 3 Blizzard-class light interstellar battlecruiser. My purpose with those 3 wrecks was always simple. With what I am today, building that Tier 3 hull outright is impossible, no matter how good the blueprint is. But if I use the Tier 3 Blizzard-class technical blueprint as the foundation and rebuild these 3 ships around it, I might be able to assemble a simplified version of it. The top starship engineer profession in my head puts the feasibility at 80% after more calculations than I want to count. I stand at the console muttering the plan aloud to nobody, that the Devil Crocodile hull carries the whole thing and the performance modules come out of the Hyena and the Grey Wolf. I can feel my own eyes going a little mad. Then I stop planning and start cutting. I take the console myself and run the robotic arms by hand. Although this is the first starship I have ever modified, the moment the first cut goes in, my body behaves like it has done this 1,000 times. The sequence is familiar, and my hands are precise. If the Academy's best starship engineer were standing behind me, he would be staring, because nobody performs this fluidly without 50 or 60 years of practical experience and a top-tier knowledge base underneath it. Dismantling 3 starships alone is an enormous amount of work, and hiring repairmen or engineers would cut it down enormously, and I cannot do it. First, I have no Academy credits left, since every one of them went into components. Second, and more important, nobody outside can be allowed to see this process. 3 different ships going in, and 1 brand new starship coming out, built around core technology from a Tier 3 Blizzard-class battlecruiser, is the kind of clue a sharp person only needs once. I do not want to find out what the consequences of that would be. So it is me, alone, for a little over 20 days by my own calculation. For the next 3 weeks, I skip essentially every class I have. It is the end of term, several assessments are already finished, and my credits are comfortably enough to carry me into 4th year, so my absence costs me nothing. The news of my challenge to Jang Horan, on the other hand, has run through the entire 3rd year, and students keep wandering to my classroom to get a look at the rumored down-and-out Baron. They all leave disappointed because the rumored Baron is under a hull with a cutting arm in his hands. Then one afternoon, the workshop door starts flashing red and chiming for entry. I ignore it for a few minutes. The chime turns out to be extremely patient and keeps going for 10 straight minutes, until I drag my body off the floor, walk to the main entrance, and open the door. The door is barely open a crack before a sharp female voice demands to know whether I have lost my mind. A long, pale leg steps through before I can see the rest of her. Jo Won-hee points at my nose and starts, and I hear almost none of it, because I have my shoulder against the doorframe and my eyes half closed. I yawn and ask her whether she has finished scolding me, because if she is, I would like to go back to sleep. The woman in front of me, elegantly built and pale as snow, is my younger sister. She is also a 4th year at the same North Star Starship Academy, and next year she will be a 5th year, which raises the obvious question of how the older brother is a year behind her. The answer is that she is a genius. She cleared every assessment of the original 3-year curriculum in a single year, went straight past me, and has been in front of me ever since. She has also been one of the great beauties of the academy for as long as she has been in it, and she is standing in my doorway in a white military cut uniform. It occurs to me that this young lady has taken half a month to come and yell at me about the duel. That means the 4th year finals must have kept her out on a live piloting assessment until now. Which means the first thing she did after getting back was come straight here. She looks me over, the dark circles under my eyes, and the wrecked hair and the smell I can no longer detect on myself. Then she looks past me at the makeshift bed on the workshop floor and the crate of instant nutritional meals beside it. The empty packaging is going stale everywhere, and the spare uniforms lie wherever they landed. That is the whole report on how I have been living. She wants to know how I still have time to rest, and whether I have any idea how much trouble I have caused. I staked a Starship duel with Jang Horan over a woman and bet my enrollment on it, she says, and then she asks whether I am insane. Then she grabs my ear. Logically, that should hurt. What actually happens is that the last 3 weeks catch up with me all at once, and I fall forward onto my sister. She goes down under me with a thump, and I end up leaning against her like a child. She sighs, says something about this guy, and hauls me into the workshop by herself. Then she looks up at the parking area, which is the size of several football fields, and stops breathing for a second. A starship is standing there. The hull is visibly old, uneven in places, and still carries the marks of cannon fire, and the consoles around it are covered in scattered parts of every size. Despite all of that, she can feel the ferocity hiding inside it. What unsettles her most is that the ship looks familiar to her, and she cannot find its model anywhere in the Starship encyclopedias she has memorized. I call her name from behind and pull her out of it. 10 minutes of sleep on the floor has put me back together enough to sit cross-legged and think again. She points at the thing and asks what it is. I answer without thinking that it is my starship. She tells me I am lying without even preparing a story first, and that Lee Wai already told her I traded my academy credits for 3 old hulls. This is definitely not, she starts, and then she stops in the middle of the sentence. She turns her head and looks at it again, and this time she is not confused. She is refusing to believe. I ask her, smiling, why the smartest person in the family has not worked it out yet. She goes over the hull carefully from top to bottom and then looks at me in astonishment. She asks whether the starship was assembled out of those 3, the Tier 2 Hyena, the Tier 2 Grey Wolf, and the Tier 2 Devil Crocodile. She has realized where the familiarity comes from. The hull is 90% the hull of a Tier 2 Devil Crocodile class medium interstellar battleship, and the weapon modules are close relatives of a Tier 2 Hyena class medium interstellar destroyers. Once she starts seeing it, she cannot stop, because the characteristics of all 3 ships are all over it. I admit it openly. The Tier 3 Blizzard-class blueprint is not something I can breathe a word about, but the fact that I assembled a starship with my own hands cannot be hidden anyway. The exchange records are sitting in the warehouse system, and I am about to fly this thing into a duel in front of witnesses, and anyone with a working eye will assemble the story themselves. She asks when exactly I learned starship assembly. I tell her I have a lot of secrets, and that alongside the Captain Department coursework I have been teaching myself starship engineering on the side. Then I point at it and tell her this is my first starship and that I have named it Blizzard Zero. Calling it a Blizzard class outright felt wrong to me, since it is a simplified shadow of the real thing, so I gave it a name of its own instead. She repeats the name back to me like it tastes strange. Then she asks what on earth this ship is supposed to be, since it looks like an interstellar battleship and an interstellar cruiser and carries the lines of an interstellar destroyer all at once. Then she asks whether I am even sure it will start. Then she stops asking about the ship. She tells me she knows how I feel about Gang Zara, that the woman is not suitable for me, and that I should not hang myself on a single tree. She reminds me what the state of our territory is. She reminds me that the two of us spent the last of the territory's savings to become students here, and that only graduating gives us any hope of reviving it. I surely do not want the Empire taking the title back, she says. Then her voice goes uneven and she asks whether, if I get myself expelled, I could face our parents in heaven, and whether I could face what our elder sister sacrificed. Then she grabs my wrist and announces she is going to her best friend, whose family name carries weight, to have her step in and negotiate the duel away with Jang Horan. She cannot move me an inch. Instead, I step in, scoop her up in both arms, and carry her. She squawks and asks what I think I am doing, with her cheeks glowing red, and I tell her we are going to look at my starship and run for the hatch with her. We go through the aging corridor inside the hall and come out at the bridge, which is this ship's brain. It is not large, about 100 square meters, and since nothing has been powered up, it is pitch black. I set her down, walk alone to the captain's chair, sit, and put my hand on the right armrest. The ship reports highest authority detected and identity verification starting, then names me as Captain Joe Jin and confirms the verification is complete. A floating crystal console rises in front of me, and I press a short sequence into it. The starship is starting. The central control system is starting. The energy system is starting. 10%, 30%, 60%. The bridge lighting comes up around us. The whole compartment brightens, and the enormous thing under our feet comes back to life. The transmission system checks itself and reports running well. The weapon system checks itself and reports running well. One mechanical voice hands off to the next, all across the bridge until my first starship is officially awake and the panel tells me every functional module is operating normally with 19% energy remaining. I punch the air. I had the technical skill, but nobody could have promised me it would light on the first attempt. Jo Won-hee did not expect it either and says so. I climb out of the chair, drop a hand on her shoulder like a big brother is entitled to, and ask her what she thinks of it. That is a slightly generous framing of our relationship, because she has been outperforming me for so long that we function more like an older sister and a younger brother most days. She rolls her eyes and asks what starting is supposed to prove, and what its combat effectiveness is, and whether it can hold up in a real engagement. Then she reminds me that Jang Horan is bringing a tier 2. She asks whether I am really sure my assembled ship can win, and tells me not to let it come apart before the shooting starts. I tell her that winning is not even the interesting question, and that in 10 minutes I can wreck Jang Horan's tier 2, and I cross 2 fingers in her face for emphasis. She glares at me and says she never realized I liked bragging this much. Then she asks the one question I have no answer to, which is how I intend to fight anything when there is not a single crew member aboard this ship except me. I clap my hands together because that is exactly what had been nagging at me while the systems came up and I could not name it. She puts a hand over her eyes and says she had better go talk to her best friend after all. I ask her, seriously this time, where a man can find crew members fastest. Dismantling and rebuilding a hull I can do. Hiring people apparently is beyond me. She tells me I have not thought through the basics and am somehow already dueling, and then she explains it anyway because she is my sister. There are generally 3 sources. The first is students from the Academy's other departments, since the Captain Department is only one of many here. The second is veterans retired out of the Imperial Army, who have no trouble at all with operations and cost a great deal of money to keep. The third is the less formal end of the market, people out of gray industries, former pirates, slaves. She adds that the Academy itself provides recruitment channels, and that my student card will connect me to the Academy network where the listings are. I rub my chin and ask which one is cheapest. She rolls her eyes, but she also knows exactly how little is in my pocket, so she answers. The cheapest are slaves, usually prisoners of war, and some of them were starship pilots before they were anything else. Most people will not use them because of loyalty and identity problems, she says, and those who do assign them only the most basic work, and putting one on a bridge is still considered. She is still mid-sentence when I connect my card to the Academy network, find the slave option tucked in the corner of a crew recruitment channel, and open the list. I read it once and then my eyes stop moving entirely, because I have just found treasure. This is the one. I hit the exchange option without a moment of hesitation, and since my Academy credits are gone, the payment comes out of my personal account. Jo Won-hee watches me close the interface with a satisfied look on my face and asks, with real dread, what I have just done. I tell her I have recruited a group of crew members and that delivery is within a day. She asks what kind of crew members. Slave crew members, I say, since she was the one who told me that was the cheapest option. She asks how much I spent when my Academy credits were already gone, and I tell her it was not expensive. Only 3,000 star coins. She goes very still and observes that, if she remembers correctly, I had a little over 3,000 star coins left in my account for living expenses. I confirm that she remembers correctly. The silence that follows is educational. Dark lines settle over my sister's face while she reconsiders everything she thought she knew about her older brother's reliability. Then, because I am helpful, I pull up the list of the slaves I bought and show her pictures included. Her expression changes twice in 1 second, because every single one of them is a half-beastman, and every single one of them is female. She says my name, just my name, in a voice with a drop of ice in it. She scolds me for a while longer and then leaves in a state of pure indignation, convinced her brother has lost his mind and is refusing on principle to be reasoned with. She is already planning how she will clean up the wreckage when it happens. After she goes, I wash, sleep properly for the first time in weeks, and put on clean clothes. The delivery arrives that day. A man with a professional smile appears at my workshop entrance, announces the 100 slaves I ordered, and asks for my identity card. Behind him are 10 mechanical carts under black cloth, each of them 3 meters high, 4 or 5 meters long, 2 meters wide, and no people anywhere in sight. I hand over the card and ask him where the ones I bought actually are. He tells me they are in here and lifts the cloth off one cart. Underneath are iron cages, cubes about a meter on a side, and inside each of them sits a half-beastman with her arms wrapped around her knees. Their clothing is in rags. There are electronic shackles at their necks and ankles. Every one of them looks hollowed out and afraid. The man cheerfully explains the software that controls the shackles, which carry an electric shock function and a self-destruct function, and warns me that unless the password is entered, any external tampering triggers the self-destruct. I ask whether the cages come with them. Of course, he says, still smiling. This stock has been sitting on their hands a long time, and now that somebody has finally bought it, a few carts and cages cost them nothing. I tell him I will push them in myself, and I do, all 10 carts, and then I pull off every black cloth. The half-beastmen come into full view. There is enormous variety among them, some covered in fur like true beasts, others essentially human in shape with ears or a tail attached, and the dog, pig, and sheep lineages are the most numerous. One of them takes my eye and does not give it back. She has white fur, blue eyes, and a stare loaded with ferocity and anger and refusal. A pair of broken white ears sit on her head, and a broken white tail lies behind her. Her face and body carry a great many ugly scars, and without them she would fit human standards of beauty easily, even as a half-beastman. I know exactly who she is, because when I bought this batch, she was the entire reason I bought this batch. I greet her by her rank and her name. General Charlotte. The white-haired woman looks up at me with surprise she cannot hide, because a stranger has just used her name and, worse, her title, so I give her the rest of it. Born in the Black Fang Star region of the Warhammer Interstellar Tribal United States, of the White Tiger tribe lineage, unwilling to accept the local lord's regime and its treatment of the half-beastman tribes of that star region, she rose and raised an interstellar resistance army. Over 3 years, she fought no fewer than 50 engagements, large and small. She once commanded a resistance starfleet of 300 ships against 500 ships of the Lord fleet. She won a victory that cost her nearly everything, and destroyed one of their Tier 3 starships doing it. 3 months ago, a traitor exposed the operation. She was ambushed by a fleet several times her size. Her starfleet was annihilated, and she went missing. What I did not expect, I tell her, was to find her sold into slavery inside the Starlight Empire. Her expression goes distant while I speak, somewhere years away from this workshop floor. I open her cage and sit down on the ground in front of it, and ask whether she feels like talking. She smiles at herself more than at me and says she is a prisoner now. So what exactly is there to talk about? I tell her we could talk about her freedom, and about the freedom of every half-beastman soldier who fell this far alongside her. That gets her attention. She fixes on me warily and asks what I mean. I put it plainly. I have a starship and no crew, and I want her and her people to be that crew. She sneers and asks whether that is not simply free labor with a better name on it, and whether that is not exactly why a man buys slaves. I tell her no 3 times over, that what I want are crew, not slaves. Interstellar warriors willing to fight for me in earnest. Half-beastmen, she says, with the old pride surfacing in her eyes, will never fight for others. So I stop arguing with her and start arguing with the part of her that still commands. If she will not consider herself, she can consider the warriors who followed her, because her defeat put nearly 30,000 half-beastman slaves into the Starlight Empire's markets. I have bought 100 of them. The rest are living on the goodwill of people who have none, and I ask her whether she really does not want to pull them out. Her face wavers. That is the moment I know I have already won more than half of this. I stand up and lay out the whole offer. If she fights for me, then as far as my ability stretches, I will buy back every half-beastman warrior of hers scattered across the Empire. Beyond that, if she leads them and works for me for 3 years, at the end of those 3 years, she and all of them go free. Then I ask her whether she is willing to fight for me, or to put it in terms she might prefer, whether she is willing to fight for her freedom. I put my hand into the cage, Every emotion she has cycles across her face at once, and in the end she reaches out and takes it. Then she tells me stubbornly that she is doing this for her people. I would have trusted her less if she had said anything else. 100 half-beastmen sit on the workshop floor with meal boxes in their laps, eating with their hands. It is only bland artificial food, and they devour it like a feast because slaves are never fed to full, and their traders were never generous. I sit down next to Charlotte with the identical meal in my own hands. Once they finish, I tell her she should arrange showers and fresh outfits, and then bring them aboard to learn their future stations. She was a fleet commander once, and it still shows in the way she eats, slowly and with her spine straight while everyone around her tears in. She glances at the box in my hands and asks, surprised, whether I eat this too. I tell her that I do, and that I will not hide it from her. Her commander is currently very poor. The food and storage will last us half a month at most, and whether there is anything to eat after that depends entirely on how she performs. I say it with as much pathos as I can manage. Watching me put on no airs at all seems to soften her, but only so far, because then she narrows her eyes and asks why I recruited only female half-beastmen. When it comes to war, she points out, everyone leans toward males. She warns me that if I have any improper intentions toward them, our agreement is void, and that she will not let them trade their dignity and their bodies for freedom. I wave both hands and tell her honestly that I have no crooked thoughts about any of them. For certain reasons, I could only recruit female soldiers this time, I say, and the reason is not something I can explain right now. Privately, I am just as annoyed about it as she is, because the restriction is not mine. She says she does not need the reason, and that if she ever finds out I have ulterior motives, and then lets the sentence end in a growl, it should be intimidating. Coming from a white-haired half-beastman glaring up at me, it is closer to cute, and the only thing killing the effect is the map of wounds across her. I ask her whether she gave herself those scars. She does not bother hiding it and says yes. Her rebel army was framed by a traitor and wiped out to the last unit. If she had not done it, the people who took her would have recognized her, and she would never have ended up standing here at all. They would not have been merciful enough to sell a rebel general as ordinary stock. I understand her arithmetic completely. Recognized and captured, she was finished. Unrecognized but wearing her own face, she was finished differently. She admits it is a surprise that I recognized her anyway. That is a sharp thing to notice, and she is right to notice it, because it proves I came for her specifically. I tell her that during my studies I researched several of her battles and saw images of her. When her face came up on the slave list, I genuinely was not sure, because the woman in front of me and the woman in those files do not look like the same person. She used to be, I say, something like the Dawn. It was only after I tricked her into confirming it that I was certain. The truth is that this body's original owner was a bookworm who read through the combat records of every race he could find, and I am simply spending his homework. Charlotte rolls her eyes, having worked out that she exposed herself. I mentioned that current medical technology could repair those scars completely, and I am not exaggerating. Her old image data makes it clear she was a beauty by any human standard, and if she walked into this academy, she would be in the running for school beauty. She refuses flatly and says a warrior does not care about her appearance. I let it go, since there is no money to do it with anyway, and that kind of medical repair costs more than my entire fleet is worth today. After the meal, I tell her it is time to see her future workstation, and I point at the steel hull behind us. She follows me aboard Blizzard Zero without objection and asks, walking the interior corridor, whether this is the ship I assembled. I confirm it. The modules came out of a Tier 2 Hyena-class medium interstellar destroyer, a Tier 2 Grey Wolf-class light interstellar cruiser, and a Tier 2 Devil Crocodile-class medium interstellar battleship. I named the result Blizzard Zero. She tells me bluntly that she is not familiar with those three classes. From the inside of the hull, she can tell they were old ships and that a great deal of this is outdated. She is not optimistic about the combat effectiveness of a vessel like this. I smile and tell her she will take that back very soon, and that she is going to fall in love with the starship. She lets it pass. When in Rome, and in any case she has no other options today, and so far this human has not displayed a single disgusting quality, whatever doubts the all-female recruiting raises. We reach the bridge, her first time there and my second, the last one being with my sister. She looks around a conventional layout with nothing remarkable in it anywhere. I tell her that from here on she is responsible for assigning stations to the half-beastman crew, and that I need them turned into effective combat power in the shortest time possible. She replies that in that case she will need to understand the ship's performance modules, and before she finishes the sentence I hand her a handheld terminal. I tell her that her information is already registered in it, and that she now holds the highest authority aboard this starship after me. She can view almost everything about the ship, and from this moment she is the executive officer. She takes it and looks at me with open suspicion, and asks whether I trust her this much, and whether I am not worried she will betray me. I smile and say nothing useful, because the honest answer is that I used the Eye of Insight on her the instant she stepped aboard. I am the captain of this hull which satisfies the condition, and under the eye she carries no killing intent and no hostility toward me at all. Loyalty is not something it can measure, and that is fine. I never expected loyalty from a woman I bought yesterday. Willingness to work is enough for now. On the surface, of course, I have a pose to maintain, so I drop into the captain's chair and stretch out. I tell my dear executive officer that I trust the people I choose, and that it is time for her to get to work. Charlotte considers that for a moment without answering, straps the terminal to her wrist, and opens the ship's data with her new permissions. Then her eyes go wide. She turns to me and asks, not quite believing it, whether the data on this starship of mine is all real. I tell her of course it is, in the tone of a man showing off his own child, and ask her what she thinks of my ship now. Her expression goes serious. If what is displayed here is true, she says, then in a duel among Tier 2 starships this vessel is very nearly an invincible existence. An invincible existence. That is a terrifying phrase to hear from someone who has commanded 300 ships. If my sister or Lee were standing here, they would laugh in her face, because 3 pieces of junk welded together are not supposed to be invincible at anything. I tell her we will take it out for a trial run shortly, and that she can use that time to arrange the crew's stations. Then I rub my nose and admit, a little awkwardly, that since I do not have much capital right now, the trial run is exactly that, a familiarization and training window. I need her to master the ship's operation as fast as she can. She asks whether she can see the list of slaves I purchased. I tell her it is inside her permissions. She opens it and finds 100 names, all of them her own companions, and her gaze goes soft while something worse than grief settles under it. There are still so many of her kin in cages somewhere. Then she puts it away and reports that fortunately these are experienced crew, and since this is only a Tier 2 vessel, 3 to 5 hours of practice should have them ready for combat. That is exactly what I wanted to hear. Half a day later, Charlotte knows Blizzard Zero and the crew have finished resting. She hands me the station assignments and tells me that piloting and operating this ship requires only 50 of them. I tell her the extra personnel become reserves across the stations, and should start learning the working environment now. This is my first starship, and it is not going to be my last, and when the time comes, those people will be crewing others. Then I give her the rest of the housekeeping. I have already filed for departure with the starport. My lease on this workshop is nearly up, and the last of my funds went into renting a berth at the Academy starport. Once the trial training is finished, we return there directly. I have bought simple bedding and daily necessities, and from now on, she and the crew live aboard this ship, and I will find a way to handle supplies later. Saying it out loud gives me a genuine ache. My account gets thinner every time I look at it, and now I have 100 half-beastmen girls to feed on top of everything else, and I need to start making money immediately. An interstellar lord this poor is not a tragedy, it is a joke. Charlotte acknowledges the order and steps a little further into the role while she does it. I sit in the captain's chair looking at this battered old bridge, with the decision already made that one day I will own a genuine Tier 3 Blizzard-class light interstellar battlecruiser. Down in the living decks, Charlotte briefs 100 crew members, 5 to a room in the living area, 2 meals a day collected on time in the dining area. Every station split into 3 rotating shifts. She asks whether that is understood, and standing in front of them like this feels like the rebel Starfleet again, even though several months have put a lifetime between then and now. One of the half-beastman crew raises a hand and asks whether they really have to fight for that human. The mood behind her is no better. They are still slaves on paper, and the weight of that sits on all of them. Charlotte answers her honestly. They are her former subordinates, and it was her own failure that put them here. And if they are still willing to trust her, she guarantees she will give them their freedom back. Captain Joe has promised that 3 years of service buys exactly that, she tells them, and that distinguishing themselves in battle will also buy the search for the companions who were sold into the Empire. Perhaps they do not trust humans, she says, but she, Charlotte, is willing to trust this one. So she asks them to trust her instead, and swears on the honor of the White Tiger clan that she will bring every one of them home. It carries. I can see it carry, because the bridge surveillance covers 80% of this ship, and I am watching the whole thing from the captain's chair. She is straightforward about it, which I appreciate. She is not fighting for me out of loyalty. She is fighting for freedom, and that is exactly why I chose to trust her. If I had bought a random slave who dropped to her knees and pledged undying devotion within a day, I would have put her off my ship immediately. The workshop gets swept clean. Everything worth taking gets taken, and the navigation channel opens up for us. Registration number Blizzard 0, permitted to enter branch route D13. I sit in the captain's chair with Vice Captain Charlotte beside me, and a dozen half-beastman crew members at their stations across the bridge, and I give the order to depart. She relays it in her own voice. Engines started. Branch route D13. The crew work the controls a little clumsily, and it goes smoothly enough regardless. And a few minutes later, Blizzard Zero clears the navigation channel of the North Star Starship Academy and its interstellar city. The bridge is a fully enclosed structure, so everything outside reaches us through image capture gear on the outer hull and gets projected across several screens in front of me. Watching the actual universe come up on those screens does something to my chest. I am sitting on my own starship sailing between the stars, and 3 weeks ago I was a dead boy in a classroom. Charlotte tells me there are 29 trial training exercises ahead and asks me to issue the order. I tell her to begin, and then I sit back, because having a competent subordinate means never having to do everything yourself. She calls the first course change like a professional. Course 071, Mark 299, engine power output 30%, speed 30 knots, and Blizzard Zero starts its first trial. The last exercise is the one she has been quietly dreading. She orders the ship held on course at full engine output, 100 knots, with every compartment watching its data and reporting any abnormality the moment it appears. Less than a month ago, this hull was 3 separate ships in a warehouse, and she knows it. 1 minute passes, then 3, then 5, then 10. The reports come back in sequence. Engine system normal, power supply normal, hull structure normal, navigation stable with no abnormalities. 3 hours later, Charlotte lets out a long breath, straightens up in front of me, and reports that Blizzard Zero has completed all 29 trial training items and requests instruction. I tell her we are going back, and I let myself smile while I say it. Somebody out there is getting impatient to be beaten. North Star Starship Academy, 3rd year, Class 8, on a break. A mocking voice drifts in from the doorway, wondering aloud whether student Joe Jin has skipped class again, and whether he might be hiding somewhere too frightened to show his face. Nobody in the room has to guess who it is. Jang Horan of Class 2 has made a habit of this since the duel was set, wandering over to perform for an audience. Every time he fails to find me here, he goes home a little more convinced of himself. I have been on long leave for weeks. To him, that reads as fear. A cold-faced girl walks up to him and tells him that this is the Class 8 classroom, and that if he has nothing to do, he can go back to Class 2. He spreads his hands and points out that school rules do not forbid visiting other classrooms during free time. He is only here, he adds, to remind his dear student Joe Jin about the duel, since the end of June is days away, and forgetting would be such a shame. While he says it, his eyes crawl over the girl in front of him, who is both the beauty of Class 8 and its class president, Shim Bin. She tells him flatly that Joe Jin has not attended class in over half a month. If he wants to find me, he can work it out himself, and he should stop disturbing them. He laughs and asks whether Class 8 is not supposed to be a team, since from her tone it sounds like Joe Jin is not a member of it. His followers pick it up behind him and run with it. One says the Joe Jin kid is scared and hiding. Another says that once June ends it is vacation, and our Baron will slink back to his territory in disgrace. A third asks why a coward afraid to duel challenged young Master Jang in the first place. The last one announces that young Master Jang is magnanimous. On the day he will simply make Joe Jin kneel and call him daddy a few times, and that will be the end of it. It lands badly with Class 8, and nobody does anything about it, because that is what Class 8 is. The students here mostly come from ordinary families with ordinary grades, and Class 2 is where the good names sit. Apart from Shimbin, who is stubborn and excellent enough to stand up to anyone, the rest of them swallow it. Which is why, quietly, a lot of them have started resenting me instead. In their view, the useless Baron was already an embarrassment inside the classroom, and now he is dragging the whole class into an embarrassment outside it. A person like that should just withdraw and be done with it. Li Wai cannot hold it in, and steps up to Jang Horan, demanding he duel him instead if he is so capable. He asks what kind of skill it takes to stand in a doorway shouting, and reminds him the duel is set for the end of June, with the deadline not even reached. His father has told him again and again to keep his head down as a merchant's son. Watching his brother get mocked has finally cost him the ability to do it. Jang Horan does not even answer him properly. He only asks whether Li really intends to stick up for his useless brother. Then he tells him his taste in friends is genuinely bad, and asks what use a useless Baron could possibly be to anybody. That is when I speak from the doorway, and tell them that since somebody is clearly impatient to start the withdrawal paperwork, I will be kind enough to grant his wish. Every head in the room turns. I walk in without hurrying, look Jang Horan over, and let my face say most of it. Joe Jin, missing for the better part of a month, has actually shown up. He recovers fast and says he thought I was hiding and did not dare appear. He is not worried in the slightest, because in his eyes I am an ant, and he can step wherever he likes. I tell him I was only resting a few days and did not expect anyone to be this impatient for a beating, and that since he is so eager we can hold the duel tomorrow. Li Wai hurries to my side and tells me quietly to calm down, that a starship duel is no small matter and that once it starts there is no right to regret it. I pat his shoulder and tell him I know exactly what I am doing. Jang Horan calls me stubborn, takes out his student card, and looks at me with a challenge sitting on his face. I take out mine without hesitating. In front of the whole classroom we lock it in. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, Dual Zone 3, under Academy jurisdiction. Then I tell him that since everything is confirmed, he can take his lackeys and get out, and stop disturbing my classmates' studies. His followers go wide-eyed, outraged that a good-for-nothing would speak to them like that, and he stops them, because the date is set and there is nothing left to win here. He only needs to wait, beat me publicly, and watch the Baron withdraw in disgrace. He tells me he will look forward to a wonderful battle and asks me not to disappear again, and then he leaves with his people trailing him. I go back to my seat. Behind me, the classroom is loud, and almost none of it is friendly. Somebody says I am genuinely insane and asks what ability I have to duel Jang Horan. Somebody else says it is not even certain I own a starship, and that Jang Horan has a brand new Tier 2. A third one says that me losing face and withdrawing is my own business, but that dragging Class 8 into the embarrassment is not. Let them talk. Only the result closes a mouth like that. Lee Wai sits down beside me and starts to say something, and Shin Bin gets there first. If a person does not have enough strength, she says, then everything he does is wrong, and whatever else I am a member of Class 8. She does not want me nailed to a pillar of shame. My sister is a genius student, she adds, and her connections should be enough to make this go away. I look up at this beautiful class president from a commoner family and ask her whether she does not believe I can win either. She asks me what I think and does not soften it at all. I shrug and tell her we can wait and see. The indifference in her eyes deepens, and she turns and goes. Lee Wai asks me seriously whether I am truly going to duel Jang Horan. I tell him it is confirmed, certain, and not denied, because I am running out of ways to answer that question. Privately, the timing suits me anyway. If I want room to move later, it is time to let people see what I can do. He studies me like a man who has noticed his brother was replaced sometime in the last month, and then makes one more attempt. If I have decided, he says, I should at least take his Tier 2 hyena into the fight. His deputy captain has 20 years of Imperial Army experience with Tier 2 hulls, and I could simply hand him everything. I tell him again that I have a starship. He says the words those three broken and cannot even finish the sentence, and asks how they could possibly win. There is no explaining it to him today, so I invent an excuse and leave the classroom. Nobody in this academy believes I am walking out of tomorrow with a win. Fine. I will just have to win and show them. The next morning, Dual Zone 3 is reserved and cleared. It is a sector on the outskirts of the academy made of dozens of dead, abandoned asteroids, kept for combat simulations and duels and anything else that needs empty space and no witnesses. As always, the whole thing goes out live on the academy's internal network. In the Class 8 classroom, somebody tunes the broadcast channel and a holographic projection opens in the middle of the room. Someone asks when it starts. Someone else reads out that it was scheduled for 10 and that it is 10 now. Under the rules, both starships have half an hour from the scheduled time to reach the battle zone. Then a voice goes up an octave and tells everyone to look, because that is Jang Horan's starship, and it is a Tier 2 Bald Eagle-class light interstellar cruiser. The room reacts the way it is supposed to. That is the finest Tier 2 interstellar cruiser in the Starlight Empire, somebody says, with speed second only to a Tier 2 interstellar frigate of the same class. Another one adds that a Bald Eagle runs at least 7 million star coins right now and is in high demand and out of stock, so wanting one and getting one are different problems. Then somebody says it is over and I am finished, and the whole room agrees. With that hole on the screen, what exactly is a down-and-out Baron supposed to fight it with? Shin Bin looks at the same Bald Eagle without a trace of envy, because she has studied it and knows what it actually is. It is a flashy hull with very little underneath. Its one genuine advantage is speed, and past that its configuration amounts to a heavily modified interstellar destroyer. Being a light ship, its armor is thin, and its firepower does not reach what a standard Tier 2 interstellar cruiser carries. In a single ship duel, though, a captain who commands it precisely can kite almost anything to death and never let the enemy close. On a real interstellar battlefield, in fleet combat, it is close to useless. Her best friend leans over and asks whether Jo Jin still has any chance at all. Shin Bin did not become class president for her face. She is simply the best student Class 8 has, and if her background were not ordinary, she would have walked into the higher-ranked classes without effort. In 3 years of theory exams, she has never once dropped out of the top 10 of her grade, which is where the nickname came from, the commoner academic prodigy. She answers that his chances are very low. Her friend says that after all his posturing yesterday, he is only slapping his own face, and that in his position she would already be back on her territory being a good-for-nothing Baron in peace. The rest of the room agrees loudly, because Class 8 is a commoner class, built out of ordinary families and small interstellar traders, and I am the only exception in it. Among nobles, my name is a joke. Among commoners, it is an irritation. Being ostracized by both was the previous owner's whole social life. Shin Bin does not join in. She keeps remembering the expression on my face yesterday, which was not the face of a man bluffing, and she cannot decide whether that was confidence or arrogance. 15 minutes from the deadline, someone asks why my starship still has not appeared, and whether the bastard has actually run. Another says he does not care whether I lose, only that it is embarrassing for Class 8. A third says never mind, because once I lose they will not have to look at my face next semester. Then Lee Wai slams his fist into the wall hard enough to stop the room, and sweeps a cold look across every person in it. Every one of them finds something else to look at. Lee Wai's standing in Class 8 is at the top, because his father is a wealthy merchant, and he uses all of it now. Whatever else is true, he says Jo Jin is a student of Class 8. It is one thing not to cheer for a classmate, but another thing entirely to stand here mocking him. And he asks where exactly the camaraderie from their military training class went. Nobody answers him directly. The whispering starts again, and none of it is good. Then the teacher clears his throat from the doorway, tells everyone class is starting and to return to their seats, gives Lee Wei one look, and walks up to the podium. Lee Wei clenches his fists and sits down. He has been trying to contact me since morning and has not managed it once. Then somebody shouts and points, because in the void that had only held a bald eagle, a second starship is coming in slowly. The hull wears the most ordinary iron-colored paint, and beside Jang Horan's cruiser it looks dilapidated, with patchwork visible in places even at broadcast resolution. Somebody asks what kind of starship that is supposed to be. Somebody else says it looks like an interstellar battleship, except the weapons on it are not the caliber an interstellar battleship should carry. A third one predicts that one shot from the bald eagle will turn it into scrap. The friend beside Shim Bin asks whether the good student recognizes it. Shim Bin studies it and frowns, then says the hull carries the structural features of 3 separate classes at once. She names the Tier 2 Hyena class medium interstellar destroyer, the Tier 2 Devil Crocodile class medium interstellar battleship, and the Tier 2 Grey Wolf class light interstellar cruiser. Then she asks whether it could be an assembled ship. Her friend laughs and asks whether I intend to beat a bald eagle with a hull I welded together in a workshop, and whether I am dreaming. Shim Bin does not answer. She keeps looking at it. The teacher tells the class that lessons have started and that irrelevant things should be switched off. Studying is the only important thing right now, he says, and they should conduct themselves honestly and with their feet on the ground. There is something buried in that last part and everybody hears it. The projection shuts down. Lee Wai sits there with his fists closed, wanting to know how the battle is going, and unable to do anything about it. Unlike me, he cannot skip a month of class and survive it. All I left him with was an instruction to sit tight and wait for good news. Nobody in that room can concentrate. What most of them are curious about is not the result. It is how badly I am going to lose. Dual Zone 3, the arbitration hub. It is a small station responsible for judging everything that happens in this sector, and it doubles as the first spectator area. With fewer than 100 people aboard, today the scenery in the seats is unusually good, because all 3 of the famous beauties of North Star Starship Military Academy are present at once. A small girl with twin ponytails, not quite 5 feet tall, covers her mouth and asks whether Jo Won-hee's brother is really coming. My sister's expression is complicated, and she answers that I have no other special qualities and that my only distinguishing feature is a stubbornness that will not bend. The girl asks whether the ship on the screen is the one her brother assembled himself, and observes with delight that it can actually still move. Beside them, a tall, ice-cold beauty with hair to her waist stands with her arms folded and offers an opinion without much inflection. Assembling 3 old hulls into one working ship inside a month and getting it to start and sail smoothly means my sister's brother is genuinely good at starship engineering. Jo Won-hee bites her lip and asks the ice-cold beauty carefully, calling her Sunbae So-ran, whether she could speak to Jang Horan afterward and get the bet withdrawn, if her brother really loses. These 2 are her closest friends. The twin-tail girl is her classmate Seol Soso. The ice-cold one is her senior So-ran, whose family carries enough weight that even the dean gives her a certain amount of face. So Ran frowns slightly and says that before the duel it might have been easy, but afterward is another matter, and then she sees the pleading on my sister's face and softens. It should be possible to keep him from being expelled, she says, but he will inevitably be humiliated by Jang Horan in the process. My sister nods hard and repeats that as long as he is not expelled it is fine, and grabs So-ran's arm and tells her she is the best. Seol Soso mutters that Jo Won-hee's brother has not even fought yet, so how does she already know he lost, and asks what happens if he wins. My sister tells her flatly that winning is impossible. Look at what her brother has, and look at what Jang Horan has, she says. A Tier 2 Bald Eagle class light interstellar cruiser, worth 7 million star coins, ranks in the top 10 for one-on-one combat capability, among every ship owned by a student in this academy. She looks at my patchwork starship with something complicated in her eyes. She wants me to win. She simply does not believe it is possible. The arbitration team opens channels to both captains and 2 video windows come up in front of them. On one side is the bridge of the Bald Eagle, where Jang Horan sits in the captain's chair in a lavish uniform that is definitely not standard issue and definitely came from somewhere expensive. A man in his 40s or 50s stands beside him carrying himself like the retired officer he is. The other window shows a considerably shabbier compartment where I am sitting in an old captain's chair with a faint smile. Behind me stands a white-haired half-beastman girl with hideous scars across her face and no expression at all. Seal Soso exclaims and asks whether that is a half-beastman. My sister covers her face and explains helplessly that after her brother finished assembling the ship he had no funds left and could only buy a batch of half-beastman slaves for her crew. So Rand frowns and privately revises her opinion of her friend's brother back downward. The chief referee runs the rules. The participants are Jang Horan of 3rd year class 2 and Jo Jin of 3rd year class 8. Apart from a prohibition on leaving the duel area, the engagement is unrestricted. The outcome is decided by one side surrendering, by one starship losing combat capability, or by the arbitration team declaring a loss. Once the final result is announced, the battle ends immediately with no further attacks of any kind permitted. He asks whether both participants understand. Jang Horan says he understands with a sneer already forming, because he can see me in his own window now and he genuinely did not expect me to show up. Driving that wreck, he is certain of the outcome. I say I understand too, and then I yawn on camera, because it costs nothing and it will bother him for the next 20 minutes. The referee announces that the arbitration team will randomly assign both ships a spawn point inside the dual starfield. Both must reach their point within 10 minutes, and the battle begins on his announcement. He presses something, and 2 circles appear on the star map of the sector, one blue and one red. Both ships receive their coordinates and start moving. Jang Horan uses the last of the open channel to perform. He claps and tells me he admires my courage, and did not expect me to actually come. He asks where I dug up this dilapidated hull, since its armor looks like it would shatter if you touched it. Then he asks, with a very ugly smile arriving on his face, whether it would be cruel of him to blow my starship apart with a single cannon shot. Killing an opponent in a starship duel does not technically violate the rules. I stretch, dig at my ear, and ask him whether he is finished, because if he is, he can start looking at flights home. His mouth twitches. He points at me and says I will not shed a tear until I see the coffin, and promises to teach me what a difference in strength feels like. I am a useless baron, he reminds me, while he is a man who will one day be a viscount or even an earl. Then the arbitration team cuts both windows. On his own bridge, Jang Horan turns to the deputy captain his father hired for him. He tells Deputy Captain Wang to play with that man's starship until it dies, the way you play with a mouse. Wang Song was a starship captain in the Imperial Army before he took this job, and he lifts his head and promises the young master that the wreck will not be returning to port. The hull under him is the fastest thing in the Tier 2 bracket, and although it has real flaws in a fleet engagement, none of those flaws matter here. Against an academy student in a patchwork ship, he has 100 ways to kill it slowly. On the bridge of Blizzard Zero, I ask Charlotte whether she has confidence. She tells me, without any inflection at all, that the battle will end in 10 minutes, and that if it takes 1 minute longer, she will take my surname. Her face says she finds the whole thing beneath her attention. I find that I am excited. I run my hand along the antique armrest of this captain's chair, because whatever else this is, it is my first starship battle. The chief referee's voice reaches both bridges at once and declares that combat has begun. In the arbitration hub, Jang Horan's people cheer. One tells him to go teach the overconfident idiot a lesson. Another says he hopes Jo Jin struggles a little longer, because if it ends in a few minutes, then everyone who came out specially to watch has wasted their morning. They all believe the result is already decided, and are only arguing about how long the entertainment lasts. Gang Sara is in those seats too, watching the drone feed without warmth. Both ships have left their spawn points and are closing on each other, and on their current headings they will enter firing range in about 10 minutes. She thinks that this time I have overestimated myself, and that if I am expelled I am reaping what I sowed, and that it will not be her fault. In her mind, there is no suspense in this at all. Besides Jang Horan winning, what other possibility is there? On the bridge, Charlotte orders the ship held at a cruising speed of 40 knots on its current heading. Under my authorization, she has full combat command of this hull. I laugh and ask her whether she is playing dumb to catch a big fish. She tells me she simply does not want to waste time on trivial matters. Bored, I pull up the data page for Blizzard Zero on the holographic projection, and read my own ship back to myself. It is classified as a star cruiser carrying interstellar destroyer and interstellar battleship characteristics, at Tier 2 technology level. Hull armor strength runs between 210 and 270 units. Cruising speed is 100 knots, and she carries a level 3 warp drive. She masses 85,000 tons with a crew capacity of 50. For weapons, she carries 1 tier, 2 heavy 1200mm Devil Crocodile cannon, 1 shell at a time on a 300-second interval. Under that sit 5 tier 2 medium Hyena laser cannons, 1 shot each on a 180-second interval. Last come 30 tier 2 medium 130mm close-in turrets that fire 2 at a time with no interval at all. The last two types sit openly on the whole surface. The first one is hidden, which is the entire trick. I rub my chin and ask Charlotte whether I can guess her combat plan. She tells me I am the captain, that I can reclaim her command whenever I like, and that here my word is oracle. So I open the other file, the much thinner one, on the bald eagle. Its weapon systems come in 3 parts. 5 Tier 2 medium 180mm rapid-fire cannons on a 10-second interval. 20 Tier 2 medium 150mm quad-barreled close-in turrets. 4 shots at a time with no interval. And the main weapon, a single Tier 2 medium bald eagle laser main cannon firing 1 shot on a 210-second interval. I lay out the reasoning aloud. Our first advantage is that they have no idea what this ship can do, and the 40-knot order was deliberate, painting us as a whole whose ceiling is somewhere around 40. When the engagement actually opens, that misconception is worth more than armor. Their 5 rapid-fire cannons hit hard but do not reach far, so the only real threat on that ship is the laser main cannon. That means we wait for the laser to fire, accelerate hard the instant it commits, and slide out from under it, because a laser's trajectory is predictable, and its travel time is long enough for a ship this fast to be somewhere else. And once that cannon drops into its charging and cooldown window, they are ours to bully. Charlotte looks over and tells me I did not waste my years at the military academy. She has never seen a Tier 2 starship that could reach 100 knots, she says, and that is precisely why she called Blizzard Zero an undefeated ship within its bracket. Having predicted the plan, I sit back in the chair and wait for the show. Soon both hulls appear on each other's radar. Charlotte checks the time, murmurs that it is 10:45, and sets a countdown holographically between us. 10 minutes, exactly as promised. She was not being poetic. Across the gap, the bald eagle moves. Their radar officer reports a target closing at roughly 40 knots, and Jang Horan orders full speed ahead and tells them to blast the shabby thing apart. Wang Sung glances at him, because charging at full speed into an enemy hull, whose performance you have not established is a textbook taboo on any interstellar battlefield. Then he weighs it against the facts as he understands them. The opponent is a student. The ship is ugly and its visible weapons are unimpressive. His own hull does 65 knots, so if anything unexpected happens, he can simply outrun it. He gives the order in Jang Horan's name, because he works for the boy and there is no sense in bruising him. The ship advances at full speed, with all weapons on standby. Jang Horan adds his own flourish. Use the laser main cannon, he says, and put 1 into them the moment they are in range, so they can witness the gap between one starship and another. He is already picturing me falling out of my chair in terror, and he laughs about it out loud. Wang Sung agrees without objection, because as far as he is concerned, this is a duel with a predetermined result. Both ships slide toward maximum firing range. Charlotte's eyes stay locked on the radar map, waiting for a thing only she has scheduled. Then the warnings start. Laser weapon attack detected, and the second one talks over the first, and the third does not finish. I catch the corner of Charlotte's mouth lifting, and the first ripple crossing eyes that have been still as dead water since the day I met her. She barks for full speed and hard right. In the arbitration hub, the audience is watching 2 hulls converge and knows the exchange is about to begin. Somebody points out the bald eagle's laser main cannon and shouts that it is about to fire. Somebody else says that Joe Jin should start praying, because that pile of junk will not survive the hit. Another asks what my ship even carries. All anybody can see on its skin is a few dozen close-in turrets and 5 laser cannons, and he wants to know how that is supposed to fight a bald eagle. They are all in the mood for a good show. In the corner, my sister has her fists closed and worry all over her face, so Rand tells her that the bald eagle's laser main cannon is not devastating, and that at this range a hit would at worst cause heavy damage. As long as her brother has the sense to concede in time, there is no real danger. She has stopped believing I can win. She only wants me to be sensible, and she does not particularly care what happens to me. She simply does not want to watch her friend cry. My sister mutters at the screen that her stubborn brother had better not get hurt, because as long as there is life, there is hope. On the broadcast, the bald eagle's bow cannon is shimmering with current. A few seconds later, the beam goes out, straight at the target. Then something happens that nobody in that room has budgeted for. Along the side of the broadcast feed, there is a live data panel for both ships, including flight speed. Blizzard Zero, which has been holding 40 knots the whole approach, begins to turn right and accelerate. In under 3 seconds, it goes from 40 knots to 80, carving an arc along the edge of a circle drawn around the bald eagle. The laser passes through the space where a slower ship would have been. The hub erupts. Somebody demands to know what just happened, and whether he imagined it. Somebody insists it is a coincidence, or a malfunction in the detection equipment, because a piece of junk like that cannot possibly do 80 knots. Another one points out that the bald eagle itself only does 65, and then a quieter voice asks the question none of them want, which is how exactly it dodged. The people who spent the morning laughing at me go silent. Seol Soso stares at her two friends with her eyes enormous and asks what just happened. My sister swallows and says 80 knots, and then says that this is not possible. So Rand says nothing at all and leans toward the screen. Having finished the arc, Blizzard Zero swings left again, points itself straight back at the bald eagle, and keeps accelerating. 85 knots, then 90, then 95. The entire hub is watching one number on one data column, and the number settles at 100. It is not that a Tier 2 hull cannot reach 100 knots. It is that such ships are rare, and the ones that exist are specially modified. That unremarkable welded together thing is doing it in front of 100 witnesses, and even the instructors on the judging panel are visibly surprised. I have no attention to spare for any of them. My breathing has gone shallow, because I have been watching the laser's trajectory graze past our tail on the radar star map. It looks like a comfortable miss from outside. According to the ship's own calculations, 1 second slower and Blizzard Zero takes it, and while a single hit would not have destroyed us, hull damage would have been guaranteed. Courtesy demands reciprocity, so I stand straight up, put one foot on the captain's chair, point forward, and tell them to show these people our 1200mm big gun and let them have it. Charlotte relays it properly. Target the enemy ship full speed ahead, and activate the Tier 2 heavy 1200mm Devil Crocodile cannon. The crew confirms, calls the 10-second activation, and on the bow of Blizzard Zero, a hatch splits open and a pitch-black barrel comes out into the light. In the hub, the audience stops sitting. So do the instructors. One middle-aged instructor says out loud that this is the 1200mm cannon off a Tier 2 Devil Crocodile class medium interstellar battleship. Then he asks how it could possibly be on that ship. The chief referee tells the man next to him to pull my Academy records, and a moment later he has them. I can imagine his face when the 3 exchange entries line up in front of him: Grey Wolf and Devil Crocodile and Hyena. He says out loud that this student used 3 ships to assemble one, and mounted the bow main gun of the Devil Crocodile on the result. The rows behind him hear it. Somebody exclaims that it really is the bow main gun of a Tier 2 Devil Crocodile class medium interstellar battleship. Somebody less well-read asks what a Devil Crocodile even is, and gets a lecture for his trouble. It is a Tier 2 interstellar battleship released a century ago, back when the fashion was heavy firepower above all else. They bolted the largest caliber gun of that era onto the bow of a medium hull. Legend has it, no Tier 2 starship in existence could survive a single shell from it. Somebody else objects that 1200mm is a Tier 3 configuration, and asks why nobody has ever heard of the class. The answer is that the design was fatally unbalanced. In chasing firepower, they never confirmed that the rest of a Tier 2 hull systems could support a weapon like that. So the ships broke constantly, and the construction cost ran several times higher than an ordinary Tier 2 battleship. It was discontinued inside 30 years. So Rand turns to my sister and asks why she never mentioned that her brother had mounted that gun on his ship. My sister's expression has gone somewhere strange, and all she can say is that she is not entirely sure either. Seol Soso is on her feet, bouncing, shouting about big guns and how much she loves big guns. Both of her friends put their hands over their eyes, because Seol Soso is having an episode. She has a serious and well-documented case of big gun obsession, and the combination she loves most in this universe is an interstellar battleship with a large caliber cannon on the front of it. Under everyone's eyes, Blizzard Zero closes on the bald eagle at a speed that should not exist, with that gleaming barrel out and level. Every person watching has worked out what happens next, and the hub goes quiet enough to hear breathing. Wang Song's face has gone grim. He demands to know why that ship is carrying a Devil Crocodile cannon, orders full-speed evasive maneuvers, and puts every close-in weapon system on interception. Beside him, Jang Horn is white, asking what is happening, asking about the massive cannon and about the wreck's impossible speed, asking whether they are in danger and whether victory still belongs to them. He is a wastrel, but 3 years at a Starship Military Academy have left him enough knowledge to understand what 1200mm means. Wang Song does not answer him, because the situation answers itself. Their laser main cannon is in charging and cooldown. Their secondary weapons are not yet in range. The enemy is closing at nearly 100 knots with a battleship gun exposed. The bald eagle has become prey standing in front of a hunter, and the only prayer left is that the shot misses and buys them a chance to hit back. Thinking about that speed though, Wang Song cannot make the prayer sound convincing even inside his own head. This is a military academy. The opponent is a fallen noble. Where does a fallen noble get a hull that does 100 knots? On my bridge, Charlotte reports that in 1 minute we enter the outer edge of the enemy's secondary weapon range, and says we fire before that. She asks to control the aiming herself and leaves the fire command to me. I tell her that is fine. She takes over the firing preparation for the Devil Crocodile cannon and orders the ship's speed cut to 0 in 40 seconds, and the helm confirms it. Why slow down? Because a starship firing while stationary hits, and a starship firing while moving hopes. That question answers itself too. 40 seconds go by in a blink. The crew calls reverse thrust and starts counting the speed down. 80, 60, 40, 25, and then reports that we are at a dead stop. From 100 knots to nothing in under 5 seconds. In the hub that resets everybody's assumptions a second time, because an engine with that much acceleration and that much braking should not be attached to a hull this ugly. And now every person watching knows exactly what is coming. Charlotte runs the automatic targeting data one last time and confirms the 1200mm Devil Crocodile cannon is locked on the Bald Eagle. She reports that the lock is complete and she is ready to fire. I give the order at the top of my lungs, and the sound of it fills the whole bridge. There is nothing in my previous life that felt like this. Almost in the same instant, a heavy cannon that has been silent for more than 80 years speaks again. A titanium alloy high-explosive shell 1200 millimeters across leaves the barrel at a speed I can feel in the deck plates, and the whole bridge shudders around me. From outside, the recoil shoves Blizzard Zero backward by tens of meters and lifts her bow slightly, with chemical smoke still hanging off the muzzle. Across the gap, the Bald Eagle's bridge goes red, and its system starts screaming about an incoming attack and telling them to evade, over and over, without pause. Wang Sung orders every close-in system into a barrage interception and shouts at them to hurry. 20 quad-barreled turrets open up at full rate and weave a dense net of fire in front of the ship. Small caliber turrets against a 1200mm shell. A praying mantis in the road, waiting for the chariot. The hit knocks the Bald Eagle's entire bridge sideways. Jang Horn is thrown 3 meters, catches a corner with his head, and slumps to the deck with blood running down his face. He clutches it and asks whether he is going to die, says he does not want to die yet, and calls for his mother. Wang Song has no attention to spare for a pampered boy who never learned the basic trick of bracing during a shelling. The reports come in on top of each other. Port armor penetrated, and the penetration set off a munitions room on the left side. And the sympathetic detonation has reached 37 compartments that are now sealed, with 8 crew dead and the injured uncounted. The blast is torn into the energy system, and supply is falling at 10% a minute, which gives them under 10 minutes before the ship has no power at all. The weapon system is malfunctioning with modules offline. The ship's speed is dropping and cannot be controlled. Wang Song stares at the flood of it in genuine astonishment, because he did not believe one shell could do this. What is in front of him is a severely damaged hull, and continuing means losing the ship and the people in it. He walks over to Jang Horan and tells him in a low voice that they have lost and should surrender. Jang Horan comes out of his panic the moment the explosions stop, and he comes out of it badly. He repeats the word lost like it is a foreign language, and demands to know how this is possible. Wang Song is supposed to be an excellent captain his father paid for, he says, so how could he possibly lose? Does he not understand? He shouts that losing means withdrawing from North Star. Then he calls the man trash, staggers upright and slaps him across the face. Wang Song lowers his head and says nothing. Then the explosions start again somewhere inside the hole, and Jang Horan folds straight back down into a crouch, asking what is happening. He looks up at the bridge's floor-to-ceiling window, a 100-degree special material pane strong enough to exceed the ship's own hull armor. It is one of the toughest surfaces on the vessel, and expensive enough that only a few areas get it. There are spiderweb cracks running across it now. The crew reports the enemy starship closing fast, and its secondary weapons chewing into them. Frontal armor damage at 20%. Whether he really hears the glass or only imagines he does, Jang Horan has already pictured in detail what happens to a man on a bridge when that window finally goes. Then he feels a warmth spreading under him that he cannot control, and he screams that he surrenders. In the arbitration zone, the instructors, the audience, and the students are all simply stunned. One shot, a single shell from that welded-together ship has crippled a Tier 2 Bald Eagle-class light interstellar cruiser, and very nearly put it down. On the feed, they can all see the hole in her starboard armor, 10 meters across at least, with secondary explosions flickering inside it. Blizzard Zero is still pursuing and still stripping her frontal plating away. If this continued, there would be only one ending. The referee team is already preparing a mandatory judgment when the surrender comes in. The chief referee announces that the winner of the duel is Jojin's Blizzard Zero, and immediately opens a channel to order me to cease fire. The hub takes a long moment to find its voice. Somebody says that Starship is too strong. Somebody asks whether Jang Horan really just lost like that. Somebody else says the sentence out loud as a question, that Jojin won. Gang Sara is among them with her eyes wide and her face blank. I won. My dilapidated starship beat Jang Horan's Bald Eagle. She thinks about the cafeteria, about a man who did not turn his head to look at her, and something extremely unpleasant settles in her chest. It gets worse now that I have won. A friend beside her looks at her strangely and says that Jojin actually won. Gang Sara says coldly that her eyes are not blind, takes one last look at the strange ship on the broadcast, and walks out of the spectator area toward the academy. Behind her, the friend calls after her, asking whether she is not waiting for young Master Jang. Other people are having a much better morning. Seo Soso is telling my sister that a massive cannon is the only truth in this universe, and that her brother's ship is amazing. She wants to know when she can be taken up to see it, and preferably be allowed to touch the 1200mm gun. My sister is still in shock, and asks whether it is over already. From the moment the two ships entered combat range to the end of it, less than 5 minutes passed. That one-shot kill is what did it, and nobody in the building expected it. So Rand gives her assessment calmly. A bald eagle's armor was always thin, and it was facing a hull carrying a Tier 2 heavy 1200mm Devil Crocodile cannon, so any hit on the armor was going to end badly. Penetrating and touching off a magazine, she admits, might simply be her brother's good luck. But she also says that this assembled ship is genuinely strong, and that 100 knots is an incredible number. Then she smiles at my sister and tells her it seems her brother will not be needing her help after all. Privately, So Rand's opinion of her friend's brother has shifted a long way in one morning, and something like curiosity has arrived with it. Anyone who can build that out of 3 antiques in a month is worth a second look. Aboard the winning ship, I am punching the air and shouting about a one-shot kill like a man half my age. Charlotte, unmoved, says we were lucky, and that the shell almost certainly found the ammunition room and the secondary explosion did the rest of the work across their hull systems. That is also why she ordered the high-speed advance and kept attacking, because a veteran who gets an opening that good does not stand around admiring it. Luck. I think about the fleet luck bonus the system handed me, the reward that cost me the right to recruit men, and I start doing arithmetic. If that is what this was, then that bonus just paid for itself in a single morning. If every shot from here on lands like that, I am going to be unbearable. Whether the setting really works that way is something only future battles will tell me. The chief referee's voice comes through telling me I have won and to cease all offensive action immediately, and I confirm it. The bald eagle drifts out there with the fire gone but thick smoke still pouring out of the wound. She will not be getting home under her own power. Somebody will have to send an interstellar tug. I ask the chief referee whether I can connect a video channel to her bridge. He hesitates, then agrees, since the referee team can open communications with either ship at any time. The window opens onto a compartment that has nothing in common with the bright, spotless bridge from an hour ago. Smoke, broken components scattered everywhere, and Captain Jang Horan sitting on the deck with a pale face and a puddle underneath him. I let out a breath through my teeth and inform him that he has wet himself. My voice reaching his bridge is what finally makes him notice the window. He points at me in shame and fury and accuses me of cheating, insisting there is no way I could have beaten him. I ask him whether he understands that the chief referee is listening to this conversation, and whether accusing me of cheating means he doubts the impartiality and rigor of the referee team. The chief referee, cold as space, informs student Jang Horan that the duel was monitored throughout and there were no irregularities whatsoever. If he objects to the judgment, he may take it to their superiors. Then he tells me that if there's nothing else, the communication ends here. It is very clear how much he thinks of this particular playboy. I tell him there is one last thing. Then I look at Jang Horan and remind him, lightly, that the duel is over and that young Master Jang surely has not forgotten our bet. The Academy formally recognized it. The chief referee delivers the finishing blow himself, informing Jang Horan that under the terms of his duel agreement he will withdraw from the North Star Starship Military Academy and asking whether that is clear. Jang Horan manages the word clear, and then the word understood, and there is nothing left in his face. Withdrawing from North Star finishes him, and his Viscount father will do the rest. The channel closes. I have no further interest in a defeated opponent. I tell the helm to return to base, and I sit back in the captain's chair feeling better than I have felt since I woke up in this world. The noise around that duel, on the other hand, is only starting. In the Class 8 classroom, the teacher ends the lesson, and the students immediately start hunting for the live channel and find it already closed. Somebody asks why the duel is not there anymore, and gets told to be realistic, because that much time has passed and Joe Jin was clearly finished long ago. Against a bald eagle, somebody adds that it is my own fault for throwing an egg at a rock, and says at least the class will have one less eyesore. Somebody points out that next year there is a collective mission, and that dragging me along would have ruined it for everybody. Lee Wai sits through all of it with a dark face, working his terminal, already assembling a list of ways to help me pick up the pieces. Then a girl who lives on the Academy forum makes a noise and tells everyone to look at the intranet trending list. She says my name, and then says in a voice that does not sound like her own, that it seems I won. Every head in the room comes up. The students in the back row genuinely wonder whether they misheard. A male student laughs and asks how I could possibly have won, and whether she read it wrong. She says it is posted on the Academy's internal forum, and that they can look for themselves, then blows up the holographic screen so the people around her can see. A post is climbing the trending list at a speed nothing else on the board can match. The title says that Joe Jin defeated Jang Horan to win the Starship duel, that a 1200mm heavy cannon appeared, and that the bald eagle was sent away with a single shot. Several related posts sit under it, none of them anywhere near as popular, because this one carries the entire video, including a close-up walkthrough of the gun. People still refuse to believe it and ask her to open the footage. Then a student checks the runtime, sees 5 minutes, and declares the video fake on the spot, because a duel between ships of the same class normally takes half an hour minimum, and some of them run for hours. The footage itself shuts every mouth in the room. Even the teacher, who was drawn back by the noise and has not left, comes over to watch. They watch Blizzard Zero use 100 knots to slide out from under a laser main cannon. They watch everything that comes after that. When the 1200mm gun rolls out of the bow, several of the boys make sounds they will be teased about later. Then the gun fires, and a single shell hits, and the bald eagle is crippled in front of them. Somebody asks aloud how my starship could possibly have a gun that size. The teacher steps forward, swallows, and says that if he is not mistaken, that is the Tier 2 heavy 1200mm cannon mounted on the Tier 2 Devil Crocodile class medium interstellar battleship. The discussion becomes a roar. A few people still suspect a forgery, right up until somebody pulls the official result off the Academy's own duel channel. The record for that morning's duel between Jang Horan and Zhou Jin lists exactly one winner, and it is not Jang Horan. Even Shim Bin has the video open on her handheld terminal, playing it over from the beginning, with disbelief sitting in her eyes. He actually won. Then Lee Wai comes out of his daze and starts shouting about his brother being awesome and his brother winning, as excited as if he had been the one in the chair. He points around the classroom and tells them all to look. This is Lee Wai's brother, he says. They mocked him and wished he would get lost, and his brother took the man out with a single shot, and this so-called Jang Horan is not fit to tie his brother's shoes. He calls them a pack of snobs and tells them to go find somewhere cool to sit. Then he walks out without caring what their faces look like, because he wants the full story out of me and he wants it now. I actually won, which means I was hiding something from him, and he knows it. Behind him, nobody in Class 8 says a word. Even the teacher is uncomfortable, because his own position an hour ago was that I would obviously lose. And Lee Wai's speech landed on him too. Blizzard Zero settles into the berth I booked at the Academy starport. She took essentially no hull damage in the engagement, so there is no repair work to schedule. I pat Charlotte on the shoulder and tell her the mission is accomplished and she is free to move around the permitted areas of the ship. What I am actually looking at is the top of her head, because I want to know what a white tiger beast woman's hair feels like under a hand, and it stays a thought and nothing more. Those tiger fangs are not decorative. My eyes drift and land on those broken white ears instead. It is genuinely painful to look at, and it drags her whole appearance down with it. So I make the decision a second time that at some point I am repairing Charlotte's body properly. She is my vice captain now. I will file it under crew benefits, and she can argue with me about it later. She acknowledges the order and says nothing else. I leave the bridge for the captain's quarters, which turn out to be close to 50 square meters, with a bedroom, a sitting area, a desk, and a bathroom I can actually wash in. Even in the layout of a hull built decades ago, whoever designed it took care of the captain. I have seen the crew quarters on this ship, and they remind me of school dormitories from my previous life, except narrower. 6 triple-decker folding beds fill a single room for 18 people. The aisle between them is under a meter wide, and all 18 share one restroom. The smell of that place is going to stay with me for years. Space is the permanent problem aboard any starship, so ordinary crew get compressed as far as the hull allows, and only senior officers get singles and doubles. Right now it is worse than the designers intended, because a dormitory area built for 50 is holding 100 half-beastmen crew, and a lot of them are sleeping on the floor. By comparison, my situation is obscene. I throw myself onto the big bed, enjoy it for a few seconds, and then get to work. Beating Jang Horan closed my mission out, and the system has been waiting for me to claim it. The record reads back the whole thing, the challenge issued, and the duel won. D-rank difficulty reward 1 mission point and 300 points, mission completed and awaiting collection. I take it with a thought, and the system confirms 300 points and 1 mission point delivered. My panel updates. Host Zhou Jin, profession top starship engineer, special attributes, fleet luck bonus and Eye of Insight. Points 400, mission points 1, starship count 1, quarterly mission still incomplete. The Tier 3 Blizzard class blueprint sitting in the warehouse where it has always been. From 100 points to 400, plus the first mission point I have ever owned. Now I finally have a mission point, so let me see what this store is hiding. What it is hiding mostly is disappointment. A Tier 1 Grey Rat class medium interstellar destroyer. A Tier 1 Shield Soldier class medium interstellar frigate. Tier 1 after Tier 1, all the way down. The exchange conditions are cheap enough, since 1 mission point and a few dozen system points buys any of them. To be fair, every system-built ship outclasses its real-world counterpart of the same tier and type by a wide margin, which makes them exceptional value. They are still Tier 1. The scrapyard hull I welded together myself is already Tier 2, so building a Tier 1 now would be walking backward. The mall only sells Tier 1 technology. That is the whole problem. So I go looking for how to upgrade it. The conditions come up quickly. Exchange one Tier 1 item, which I have not done. Complete one D-class system mission, which the duel already covered, and spend 100 system points on the upgrade itself, available once the first 2 are satisfied. I have the points. I have the mission. All that stands between me and a Tier 2 mall is buying a Tier 1 item I do not want, which puts me right back where I started, and I frowned at it for a while before the obvious answer arrives. If I exchange for a Tier 1 starship, nothing says I have to build the thing. I can sell it. Good starship technology has always been in demand, and precisely because it is precious, almost nobody sells it. I do not have that problem. Direct sale earns less than building and selling finished hulls, and I do not have the time or capital to build anything, so a quick clean sale suits me perfectly. The complication is that a student suddenly producing starship technology for sale, even the lowest tier of it, is going to attract exactly the kind of attention I cannot afford yet. I need a middleman, and I need the transaction to be simple. Then I think of Lee Y. His family runs interstellar trade under a group called Northern Goose Interstellar Trade Group. In his recent years, they have been pushing into the starship arms trade. It has not gone well. The ships they funded and developed have barely sold. Lee Y mentioned to me once in passing that if they cannot produce a popular product before the end of this year, the family may have to abandon starship sales entirely. That is a ready-made opportunity walking around with my name in its mouth. Running it through Lee Y also lowers the risk of my identity leaking. I go into the Academy network and pull everything I can find on their starship business. Over 5 years, they have launched 6 ships, support types and combat types both, and every single one failed. Either the performance had a significant flaw, or the value simply was not there. The worst of them sold fewer than 10 hulls before customer complaints about defects forced a production halt, and a large compensation payout. The best of them sold under 100, and was a deliberate loss leader for publicity, and it did not even manage that. So I start reading properly, hunting for the starship model that fits their situation, and cross-checking it against the Tier 1 inventory in the system mall. One candidate is too difficult to construct, another has a market too narrow to save anybody. I work down the list carefully. Then I find it, and I confirm the exchange. 50 system points and 1 mission point for the technical blueprint of a Tier 1 Wolf-Louse-class medium interstellar destroyer, leaving me 350 points. My mind jolts, and the entire blueprint unfolds inside my head at once. Do not underestimate this one. I chose it with care, and if I did not already have Blizzard Zero and a Tier 3 Blizzard-class blueprint in my warehouse, I would seriously consider building it myself. Good quality, low price, durable, and hard to kill. It is exactly the ship a failing manufacturer needs. Then the ship's system AI speaks up in her gentle way and tells me that someone on the external network is requesting a connection, identified as my classmate Lee Y. Speak of the devil. My mouth curls into something a merchant would recognize. Little Lee, do not blame me for negotiating hard. Even brothers keep clean accounts, and if this ship goes to the Lee family, it will make their name across the entire Tier 1 market. I tell the AI to have them wait outside and get off the bed. Before I go, I instruct Charlotte to stand by and order that without my word no crew member leaves Blizzard Zero and nobody comes aboard, and that she contacts me immediately if anything happens. Outside the berth, Lee Y is staring up at the steel bulk in front of him with his eyes shining. Blizzard Zero runs nearly 260 meters long because she is built on a battleship hull, and that is what battleship hulls do. The armor is rusty in places and the design language is decades out of date, and he is looking at it like a monument. The only thing spoiling it for him is that the 1200mm cannon is concealed again and there is nothing to see. The hatch opens and I stroll out, and he is on me instantly with an arm around my neck, demanding to know when I put a starship like that together. I tell him it is those 3 hulls from the Academy exchange, exactly as advertised. He says that is not the question, and asks when I got this kind of technology. I shrug and tell him that while a certain person was chasing girls, playing games, and relaxing, I was reading books. He accuses me of having been reading starship engineering the entire time, and then accepts it, because the previous owner of this body genuinely was a grind who never left the top 5 of Class 8 in theory. What Lee Y cannot believe is how far the self-study went. Then he begs to be allowed aboard, and specifically to see the 1200mm gun. I tell him it is not impossible, but that I need a favor first, and I look at him the way a man looks at a very large bank. He grins, leans into my ear, and offers me his personal collection of adult films, spanning 720 species and 10,000 terabytes. He has acquired several exceptional new titles lately, he adds, and we can discuss them together. I put 3 meters between us immediately and ask him whether I look like that kind of person. Lee walks the corridors of Blizzard Zero and cannot hide his disappointment at how narrow and battered everything is. I tell him before he can finish the sentence that of course this is not comfortable. The ship was assembled from 3 hulls with nearly a century behind them, and comfort and aesthetics were never on the list. After 10 minutes of touring, we go back outside. He says the view is better from out here. Then he asks why every crew member aboard is a half-beastman female, and tells me he never knew I had that preference. Personal taste is nobody's business, he adds, but a starship battle is not the place to indulge it. I roll my eyes and tell him I am not as filthy-minded as he assumes. There is a reason I recruited these particular crew, and they were crew members long before they were slaves. Then I ask him whether he watched the battle, and whether a boat full of decorative vases could have fought it that way. He concedes the point immediately and asks what favor I wanted. So I get down to it. His family is in interstellar trade and has been expanding into starship arms for a few years now. As it happens, I have developed a Tier 1 starship of my own, and I would like him to pass the technical blueprints to his family and find out whether they're interested in buying. It has to be done quietly though, because I do not want many people knowing about me, and even if his father asks directly, my identity stays out of it. He is startled and asks whether I develop starships now. Then he thinks about a man who turned 3 antiques into a hull with that kind of combat power, and decides a Tier 1 design is not much of a stretch. Tier 1 technology is not especially difficult, and some blueprints at that level have even been published publicly for study. He is honest about his limits. He cannot interfere in family business and cannot promise they will buy anything, but he can mention it to his sister since she was the one who proposed the expansion into Starship Arms and still runs that division of the group. Then he tells me the rest of it. The company is not optimistic about the business at all. They have lost money 4 years running. Even the Tier 1 ship that was supposed to launch this year has been delayed indefinitely. The board has already begun pressing them to abandon the whole line. I pat his shoulder and hand him a storage device the size of a thumb. Whether we reach a deal or not does not matter, I tell him, as long as the Lee family actually looks at it. He should encrypt the data and send it straight to his sister, and he should remember to keep my identity out of it and invent whatever excuse he likes if she asks. He turns the device over carefully and asks whether these are the blueprints, and whether I am really handing them over that casually. Then he asks whether network transmission is even safe, and whether he should deliver it to his sister in person instead. The holidays start in a few days, he points out, and he is going home anyway. And he could tell me the result next semester. It may only be Tier 1 data, but it is my work, and trade secrets like this normally travel by hand and almost never over a network. I tell him it is fine, that the files inside are already encrypted, and that once he sends it he simply lets me know and I will decrypt it remotely so it can be opened. Then I tell him to go send it now, because I am in a hurry. I genuinely cannot wait until the end of term. The plan is to turn this Tier 1 technology into a pile of money, and use that money to build a real system starship. Blizzard Zero is excellent, but she will always be a hull I welded together out of other people's mistakes. He agrees, and then warns me not to get my hopes too high, mostly because he is afraid of what a rejection would do to my pride. His sister, he explains, is ruthless where business is concerned, and she has never in her life accepted something she was not satisfied with. I tell him to do exactly as I asked, and stop worrying about the rest. If Li Wei's sister is not a fool, she will see what this ship is worth the moment she opens the file. He says goodbye and goes back to his dormitory, and does what I asked, sending the data on to his sister. The file is large enough that with intergalactic transmission it will take about a day to arrive, so he messages her in advance, to explain roughly what is coming. I go back to my own dormitory first, because although I now have a captain's cabin aboard Blizzard Zero, most of my belongings are still in a student room and need moving. The timing is convenient. The semester is ending, and I will not need to buy a ticket home, since I can simply take my starship back to my territory. The dormitory is a single room, and it does not compare to the captain's quarters in any dimension. I sit down on the narrow bed and open the system page to the store upgrade panel. Exchange 1 Tier 1 item completed. Complete 1 D-class system mission completed. Consume 100 system points. Available now. I confirm it without hesitating. 100 system points spent. Tier 1 store upgraded to Tier 2 store. 250 points remaining. Then the system adds something I was not expecting. Congratulations on unlocking the Tier 2 series, it says. And here is 1 free exchange that requires no mission points at all. That is a genuine gift. I had been sitting here trying to work out how to accumulate enough mission points for a Tier 2 hull, because the store requires them for every exchange, and Tier 2 items cost 3 mission points each. At my current rate, that could have taken most of a year. Apparently, the higher the tier, the more it costs in both currencies. Out of curiosity, I check what upgrading a Tier 2 store into a Tier 3 store would take, and the answer is 2 C-class missions, 2 Tier 2 item exchanges, and 2,000 system points. That is a wall for another day. Today's business is choosing a starship. I take my time with this, one, more seriously than with anything else I have done since I arrived, because this is my first starship in the true sense of the word. Blizzard Zero only counts for half. An interstellar destroyer would be sensible, or a star cruiser, or an interstellar battleship. Then my eyes stop on a line partway down the list. Tier 2, Aircraft Carrier Starship. That is the one. Tier 2 B Queen Class Heavy Carrier Starship. My eyes light up the moment I read the name. Back home in Korea, in my previous life, an aircraft carrier was the thing every one of us dreamed about. Here in the interstellar era, they exist too, and if you ask what counts as a giant ship in this bracket, the answer is only ever two types: interstellar battleships and aircraft carrier starships. I redeem it without hesitating. 250 system points in my one free exchange, and the system congratulates me and informs me that my remaining balance is 0, exactly as planned, which leaves me broke again and worth every point of it. The data for the B Queen floods into me. Normally, an interstellar fleet with a carrier at its center needs a large screen of escorts around it, unlike an interstellar battleship, which can stand alone. That is why carriers in active service are far rarer than battleships, since building a fleet around one costs a fortune, and a lone carrier cannot generate combat power on its own. This B Queen is different. She fights independently, and that is the entire reason I wanted her. A carrier fights in 3 ways: with interstellar fighters, with interstellar drones, or with small and medium starships. That third case is rare, because carrying actual starships requires a Tier 3 hull at minimum, and nothing smaller has the volume. The B Queen belongs to the second category, and her combat method is interstellar drones. I read the full specification. She is an aircraft carrier starship at Tier 2 technology level, with hull armor strength between 300 and 350 units, and a cruising speed of 40 knots. She carries a 4th level warp engine, runs 460 meters long, masses 400,000 tons, and takes a crew complement of 100. Her weapons are 3 drone types: the Tier 2 Young B-Class light interstellar drone serving as interceptor, the Tier 2 Killer B-Class medium drone serving as fighter, the Tier 2 Bumblebee-class heavy drone serving as bomber. Her standard hangar configuration is 300 Young Bees, 100 Killer Bees, and 20 Bumblebees. The volume alone tells you what she is. 460 meters makes her nearly twice the length of Blizzard Zero, and 400,000 tons makes her nearly 5 times the mass, and she carries 420 drones across 3 classes. Normally, a carrier only carries one type, because different models mean different maintenance teams and different support systems, and mixing them is how you strand half your air wing. The B Queen carries all 3 anyway, and it is not stupidity. She is fitted with an intelligent system that sits close to Tier 3 standard, and under that management, the 3 types never leave a gap between them. The roles divide cleanly. Interceptors are the carrier's close bodyguards, existing to protect the hull and swat down incoming attacks. Fighters are the main force for seizing superiority in an engagement, and can strike enemy starships as well. Bombers do exactly what the name says, carrying interstellar missiles or bombs or torpedoes as the situation demands. Their strike power against a starship is the highest of the 3, while their own dogfighting ability is close to nothing. Together, they cover each other perfectly. Under normal doctrine, you would need several carriers to fill those 3 roles, and the B Queen fills them alone. Then there is the part that matters most, the reason she needs no escort at all. She has a star shield. The star shield is an energy defense screen, standard equipment on Tier 3 hulls, capable of forming a barrier across an arc and intercepting enemy fire from that direction. It was the breakthrough that transformed starship survivability, and it is the main reason people say a Tier 3 ship is the only real starship. The B Queen is Tier 2 and carries one anyway, and paired with 300 Young B interceptors, that makes her offense and defense a single closed system. Against a Tier 3 fleet, she would be taking a risk. Against Tier 2 hulls, she is a nightmare, and taking several at once is not out of the question. That is why I picked her. Then I calculate what it costs to actually build her, and I make a noise. 1,300,000 star coins. For perspective, the total savings of the entire Joe family, top to bottom, does not exceed 100,000 star coins. My interstellar territory, with its barren galaxy and its years of mismanagement, brings in 1 million star coins a year across taxes and everything else combined. This is precisely why Jang Horn called me a fallen baron. I cannot afford a Tier 2 Hyena-class medium interstellar destroyer at 4 million star coins, let alone anything larger. On the other hand, if I sold a completed B Queen, she would fetch 20 to 30 million. Selling starships is a road to wealth, because the arms trade prints money in every era. I have neither the capacity nor the time for that yet. 1,300,000. With whatever the Wolflouse blueprint brings in, that should cover a single B Queen from keel to launch. Now I wait on Lee Wei. Northern Goose Interstellar Trade Group, headquarters in the middle of a board meeting. Along with the Lee family, there are several outside shareholder directors in the room, and the mood is not friendly. One director bangs the table and lays it out. For 5 years, Northern Goose has been in the red on Starship Arms, carried entirely by the other divisions, and last year that dragged the entire group's profit into the red. He argues that the Starship Arms trade is not a business you simply walk into, and that the research investment is enormous and the risk worse. They should go back to honest interstellar transport and interstellar industry. The other directors agree with him loudly and demand the division be shut down. A woman stands up to fight it. Northern Goose has hit a ceiling, she says, and competition in every original division is sharpening, and without a breakthrough the group declines sooner or later. If they want to reach the next level, they have to take the Starship Arms trade. They come at her hard. One of them tells Miss Ayong that this is not hers to decide. Although the Lee family founded Northern Goose, she and her father hold only 45% of the shares now, and everyone else opposes her. The largest shareholder outside the family snorts that this is a board resolution and closes the subject. Lee Ayong bites her lip and says nothing. The Starship Arms trade is her dream and her life's work. Everyone in this room sees 5 years of investment. She started planning it 10 years ago, and she has poured every hour of her time and every unit of her energy into it. And she is past 30 and still unmarried because of it. She is not going to hand it over because a room full of uncles voted. Then the middle-aged man in the chair at the head of the table coughs and takes the floor. These are all Ayong's uncles and elders, he says, and Ayong's expansion into the destroyer trade was for the sake of Northern Goose and counts as opening new territory. Everything is difficult at the beginning. When his own father started this company, did he not have to survive the first 10 years to build what stands today? That man is the chairman of the Northern Goose Interstellar Trade Group, the current head of the Lee family, and Lee Y's father. The second director answers him coldly. Back then was back then and now is now, he says. Everyone here has families to support, and they trusted the Lee family head enough to put their entire fortunes and lives into Northern Goose, and now the company is operating at a loss. The Starship trade is a bottomless pit, and continuing will ruin them all. Lee Ayong is on her feet again before he finishes. Sticking to old ways, refusing to progress, refusing to step outside the comfort zone is the thing that will actually drag Northern Goose down. The directors start muttering among themselves that the girl is ignorant and disrespectful. Then the second director smiles and goes for the throat. He always said girls were not suited to business, and she is nearly 40 now. If she had listened to him back then and married that earl's son, she would be a countess enjoying her life instead of grinding herself down in a boardroom. She does not give him an inch and repeats the phrase back at him, enjoying life. She tells her second uncle she has no intention of becoming a caged canary like her cousin, who does not dare open her mouth while her husband entertains himself elsewhere. If that is what enjoying life means, then Lee Ayong has no such fortune to enjoy. His face goes very ugly. He is her father's younger brother and the second largest shareholder in the group, and he has just been told in public exactly what his advice is worth. The Lee family head steps back in cheerfully and proposes they give Ayong a little more time. They agreed on 5 years, and half a year of that still remains, so as long as her division turns a profit inside the deadline, it continues to exist. Why is everyone in such a hurry? The second director snorts that they will give his niece her half year, and that when it ends he will be arranging her a good marriage, and then he leaves. The rest of the directors file out after him. Her father looks at his daughter, sitting there with her jaw set and her eyes wet, and he sighs. It is not that he will not help her, he says. Business is simply like this, and everyone in the room only cares about profit. She has half a year, and if her division can turn a profit in that time, or even simply break even, he can keep it alive. If it fails, then it fails, and if she still wants to do business, she can go back to interstellar transport. Half a year. She does not have a single decent Starship product in her hands, and she does not believe it can be done. She tells him she understands, says she is tired and going back, and walks out. She throws herself onto her bed at home, and a fluffy cat-shaped pet jumps up after her. She tells Mong Mong she is very tired today and to go and play by itself, and then she puts her arm across her eyes and works hard at not letting the tears through. 5 years of preparation, 5 years of effort, more than 10 years of her youth, and all of it ending here. Her handheld terminal chimes. It is a communication request from her younger brother, so she sits up, puts her face back together, and accepts it. Lee Y opens with a question about why her eyes are red, and the intergalactic delay puts nearly 10 seconds between every exchange. She tells him it is nothing, and she has been tired lately, then asks why he is suddenly calling and whether he has burned through his living expenses again. She reminds him his vacation starts in a few days, and asks whether he failed his year-end assessment and has to repeat the year. He pouts and asks why she never wishes him well. He still has his living expenses. He is not repeating anything, and next year he will be a 4th year with the right to genuinely pilot a starship. So she asks him why he thought of contacting her, because her brother never seeks her out unless he wants something. He gets to business. He sent her starship blueprint data yesterday, and it should have arrived. and he wants her to look at it, because a friend of his made it and would like to know whether she's interested in buying. She stares at him and asks whether he has run up a debt and is trying to work an angle on her. He complains that she always looks down on him, tells her to go and look for herself and contact him if she is interested, and says he will put her in touch with the friend. Then he adds, gently, that she should not get her hopes up, and if the thing is barely usable, she should just quote a decent price to give her little brother some face. He still does not believe anything I build could be worth much. He tells her to contact him after she has read it, and cuts the channel before she can look down on him again. She sits there thinking that her brother could not possibly know anyone capable of designing a starship, and that this is obviously an attempt to work her. She sits stunned for another 10 seconds. Then, on an impulse she cannot explain, she opens her mailbox and the data file is there, already decrypted. She has nothing else to do, and her starship design department has produced nothing in months. She tells herself she may as well see what her brother sent, and she opens it. Her eyes change as she reads. Indifference goes first, then everything else, until she is reading with her whole body and even her breathing has gone quiet. More than half an hour later, she comes back to herself, raises a hand, summons a holographic computer, and starts simulating the data in the file. No problem anywhere. No problem at all. None of it a problem. 3 more hours go by like that. Her face runs through everything a face can do, and she keeps muttering the name to herself. Tier 1 Wolf-Laus class medium interstellar destroyer, and the words "this technical blueprint." Then she stands up, copies the technology to a data disk, runs out of her bedroom and heads for her starship design research department. The trip normally takes an hour, and she drives the flying car manually and does it in 10 minutes. She does not even change into a researcher's uniform. She walks straight into the department, stands in front of her whole team of researchers and engineers, points at the disk and tells them to check immediately whether this blueprint technology is feasible. She wants a reliable feasibility report within 5 hours, she says, and then corrects herself and says, 3. Over those 3 hours, the laboratory travels from confusion to shock to open delight. The general engineer, an elderly man with a full head of white hair, ends up standing in front of Lee I-yong, barely able to keep still. He asks where she got this technology, notes that even at 80% of the data with the important technical details redacted, this starship is absolutely feasible. The Wolf-Laus has extraordinary value for its cost, he tells her, and he never imagined a hull this cheap to build could perform at this level. On the market, it would be a very hot product. Lee I-yong holds that data disk like treasure. If she was falling into an abyss an hour ago, this is a rope lowered from heaven. She tells him to cancel every current research task and go deep on this technology, and hands the disk to the general engineer. He starts asking again where exactly it came from, and she is already out the door. She gets into her flying car and calls her brother. The first attempt is cut off, which puzzles her, and the second is cut off as well, which starts to make her uneasy. Third attempt, hung up, and this time a text arrives saying he is in the shower, and can they talk afterward. Dark lines settle over her face. She grits her teeth and sends back that if he does not want to die, he will pick up immediately. If he hangs up one more time, the day Li Wei comes home becomes his Memorial Day the following year. The fourth request is not cut off. It rings for about half a minute and then Li Wei appears wrapped in a bath towel, dripping, looking as resentful as a man interrupted in something important. He asks what is wrong and why she is in such a hurry. She asks him directly who gave him that starship blueprint. He starts to answer, remembers my instructions, coughs and says his friend prefers to keep a low profile and it is not convenient to reveal his identity. Then he asks how the technology is and whether she wants it, because if not, he needs to give his friend an answer. She asks whether he cannot even tell his own sister, and then offers to triple his living expenses next semester in exchange for the name. He hesitates, genuinely struggles with it, and holds, because he gave his word. Besides, what happens if the man finds out Li Wei leaked his identity, gets angry, and refuses to talk to her at all? She has to concede the point and swallow the curiosity. Privately, she decides it must be the work of some starship engineering mentor at the North Star Starship Military Academy. So she asks him to put her in contact with a gentleman, tells him she is very interested in the technology, and asks whether a time can be arranged to speak in person. He is surprised she is interested at all and asks whether she did not look at the contents. She points out he could have looked himself. He waves that off and says he is not from the Starship Engineering Department and would not understand a word of it. His sister graduated from that department, which is where her obsession with starship research and manufacturing came from. Combined with a family already in starship trade, it is the whole reason she pushed into arms. She tells him to hurry, and then changes her mind and tells him not to hang up at all, because she will wait on the line for news. Until she has authorization for this technology, her mind will not settle for a second. It is her only lifeline. About 10 minutes later, he comes back into the window and reports that his friend says there is no need to meet in person. If she has an idea, she can enter an online room and talk there. Then he sends her a link. Talking in an online room. She is surprised that a matter this important gets an environment this casual. Then she decides the priority is acquiring the technology and nothing else. She clicks the link and a window opens, and it is not a video channel. It is a text chat. She takes a breath and sends the first message, introducing herself as Li Wei's older sister, Li Aiyang, head of the Starship Arms Trade Department of the Northern Goose Interstellar Trade Group. Half a minute passes, and then a reply arrives that consists of a single word. Hello. Those 2 syllables put a lump in her throat. She has never conducted business like this in her life. She sends that she is very interested in the Wolflouse technology and hopes they can arrange a time to discuss a cooperation plan in detail. I answer that there is no need to arrange anything. If she is sure she wants this technology, she names a price, and if I am satisfied, she transfers the money and I send her the complete technical data. That knocks her sideways a second time, because nobody is ever that straightforward, and because now she has to name a price. She has no idea what to quote because none of this matches how she does business and she came in completely unprepared. The other party is simply not playing by the rules. She thinks about it and then asks me what price I consider suitable. I go quiet for a few minutes and then send a number. 3 million star coins. On her side of the screen, 3 million reads as an outrageous authorization fee for a Tier 1 design, since a Tier 1 hull sells for 20 or 30,000 at market. Then I send a single additional word down the channel, which is buyout. Her heart jumps. She asks immediately whether I am certain. 3 million star coins for a full buyout of this starship technology. Because a buyout means that once the money moves, the technology belongs to her forever. All she had been asking for was a license. I confirm it and ask whether she agrees to the price. She sends a single word back down the channel, and the word is agree. On my side of the window, I stare at that word, clutch my chest, and inform the empty room that I quoted too low. I had been planning to tell her there was room to negotiate. I genuinely thought I had padded the number. So the deal closes at 3 million star coins for the Tier 1 Wolflouse class medium interstellar destroyer. Bought out entirely. I sent her the complete technical data immediately, along with a note asking her to transfer the 3 million to the account below within 3 days of receiving it. An interstellar bank card number under the Starlight Empire. She writes back half in shock, asking whether I really just sent her the technology, and whether I am not worried she will go back on her word. None of that is how an interstellar transaction works, and all of it is how a person buys something in a supermarket. I tell her I trust Li Wei, and that if she genuinely dared to try it, I would make her pay 1,000 times over. Then I tell her I have other matters, wish her a happy cooperation, and leave the room. She scrambles to ask how she can contact me in future, and gets nothing back at all. What a strange person, she thinks. This is the most bizarre business deal she has ever made, and she realizes she does not even know what to call the other party. Strange person and strange business, she decides. And in the end, none of it matters. With the full Wolflouse technical data in her hands, she is confident she can turn the Starship arms trade from a loss into a profit inside 6 months. She is going to make every person who was waiting for her to fail pick their jaws up off the floor. Meanwhile, I am sitting on my bed feeling ill. I should have said 4 million, which apparently makes me still a child at business. To be fair to myself, 3 million as a buyout is on the high side for Tier 1 technology. It only worked because Li Aiyang was desperate for exactly this, and a thirsty person handed a bottle of water does not argue much about the price. 3 million star coins, which means I can start building my second starship, the Tier 2B Queen class heavy carrier starship. Building a ship for nothing is not the same animal as assembling one. Raw materials, a construction site, construction technology, and 100 other things stand between the blueprint and a hull. Then my handheld terminal rings, and it is my sister. I greet her by observing that the young miss has contacted me out of nowhere, mostly to annoy her, because Zhou Wan He almost never seeks me out, and when she does, it is in private and face-to-face. Then I notice 2 women standing behind her, one older and one considerably smaller. She tells me to stop babbling because her friends are here, moves aside and introduces them. This is Sunbae So-ran from the 5th year, and this is her classmate Seo So-so from the 4th. And she assumes she does not need to introduce me. When she says the word brother, the disdain on her face is visible from orbit. So Rand greets me politely and says they often hear Wan He mention me. I shrug and tell her that if my sister mentions me without insulting me, that already counts as a good day. Then Seo So-so leans right into the camera with her eyes sparkling and asks whether she can see my big cannon. I sit there for a second because that sentence has a great many possible readings. My sister yanks her backward and demands to know what she is saying. Seo So-so pouts and clarifies that she only wants to see the 1200mm heavy cannon on Blizzard Zero, up close. I change the subject and ask So Ran to get straight to whatever she came for, because this small person is going to end me. So Ran gets straight to it. The reason she is contacting me is yesterday's Starship duel. I narrow my eyes and wait, because I already know this is about Jang Horan. He was never going to withdraw from North Star quietly. His whole future is attached to it. She explains that Jang Horan went looking for connections, that somebody knew she is close to my sister, and so the request came to her. They would like me to cancel his expulsion. I ask whether that is even possible, since the penalty is registered in the duel record. She tells me the Academy recognizes and enforces the stakes of a starship duel, but that if the winning party is willing to cancel the punishment, the losing party is exempted. So it needs my nod and nothing else. I say nothing, so she keeps going. The person who asked her is a friend she owes a favor to, and if I am unwilling, she will pretend she never raised it. If I am willing to talk, she can arrange a time and place, and I can name my own conditions because obviously nobody expects me to cancel it for free. I ask whether I can have a private word with my sister, and so Ran takes Seal Soso and goes. My sister folds her arms and tells me they are gone and I can say whatever I wanted to say. I ask her whether she wants me to help. So Ran. She is thrown by that and asks why I am asking her, since it is my business. I smile and tell her that my sister almost never asks me for anything, and that I am guessing So Ran matters a great deal to her. Her cheeks go red, and she tells me the truth. She likes So Ran enormously. After she arrived at North Star, So Ran looked after her, and So Ran and Seal Soso are the only two friends she has here. She also knows what So Ran is dealing with. The person who asked her for this favor is a fifth-year senior named Han Chen Wang. He helped So Ran with something once, and ever since he has been using that debt as a lever to pester her and push her into dating him. She does not like him and cannot get free of him while she owes him. If she can clear the debt with this, the harassment ends. I nod and tell her to let So Ran arrange it, to send me the time and place tonight, and then I agree to talk. She lights up and asks whether I mean it. I grin and tell her that this is the first time my little sister has ever asked me for a favor, so what else was I going to say? She rolls her eyes, informs me that nobody asked me and I can help or not help as I please, and hangs up on me. Honestly, whether Jang Horan gets expelled means nothing to me. I never cared about that background character or about his arrangement with Gang Sara, and if the system had not handed me a mission, I would never have proposed the duel in the first place. Now there is a chance to help my sister's senior and squeeze money out of a rich boy in the same afternoon. My mouth curls up on its own. Tomorrow is going to be entertaining. North Star Starship Military Academy, the ocean-style restaurant. Holographic aquatic creatures from some unnamed galaxy drift past me while I walk in, and the whole room is quiet and unhurried, with only a few dozen diners in it. This is one of the higher-end places at North Star, patronized almost exclusively by noble families, and rumor says half the ingredients here are naturally grown. Walking in with three beautiful women beside me turns a great many heads. So Ran asks whether I have decided what conditions to put to Jang Horan. I tell her I have it figured out, and she leaves it there, since her role today is purely to bridge the gap. Whether it succeeds does not affect her. She's only here because she owes somebody. Then a voice calls out for Ran, and I spot a pale-faced young man at a round table by the window waving to us. 3 people are already seated, and one of them is Jang Horan, and one is a face I do not know. Jang Horan's expression is bad. His eyes touch mine for half a second and dart away, and he arranges himself to look pitiful. Underneath it, I can feel exactly how much he hates me. One lesson does not fix a man like that. So Ran leans in and murmurs that whatever I am thinking I should simply say.